Okay. Tēnā koutou katoa, welcome back to this meeting of the Central Otago District Council that began last night. So we are, that meeting was adjourned and this meeting is the continuation of that and the continuation of the thoughts of the karakia that opened that meeting. A call for apologies is needless because we have none, but we will note that my mistake last night, we should have noted Martin as an apology for lateness. Because he wasn't there last night, but he is here today. But we can just note that. I think it's easier. We don't need to move anything in that regard. Wayne? Yeah. Okay, thank you. We now move to public forum. We're just going to slightly change the run sheet because we have folk regarding the road stopping matter talking in public forum. Then we were going to have community board chairs. Then we were going to talk about the road stopping. Then we were going to talk about districtisation, which makes no sense. So we will hear from the folk in regard to the road stopping, then we'll have the road stopping matter, then we'll hear from the community board chairs, and then we'll have the matter that they're talking about. So on that basis, I'd like to welcome Matt Tepper, Peter Dimmock and Sean Aldridge up to the table to speak to the road stopping in Swindon Street, OFA. The idea being that you folk will talk for 5 minutes or so and there'll be questions from councillors on that. And then we'll move pretty much straight into decision after that, which of course, I'm sure you will be, or most obviously welcome to stay here. So kia ora, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Kia ora. Tēnā koutou katoa. My name is Matt Tepper, and I'm here with my wife, Rin, and we are joint applicants for the road stopping application before you. We are joined by our co-applicant, and name is Sean Aldridge, along with our planning consultant, Peter Dimmock. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you today. I understand that time is limited and a decision will be made shortly. In the few minutes I have, I will focus on sharing my insights that I believe are critical as you make your final determination. My wife and I own Section 3, or as it's known, 54 Swindon Street, Beaufort. We purchased this section in 1988 with the view to build a new holiday cottage. The section was bare-land, which we had a temporary 3 by 2 metre hut and a corrugated iron garage and miner's hut on a rocky outcrop at the pointy end of the section. In 1989, we applied for a building permit and built a new 2-bedroom dwelling. We knew at the time the boundary adjoining the unformed road was not on the fence line, as we had assumed all other boundaries to be. The fence line adjoining Swindon Street we undertook to be correct, because it ran the length of the town with the infrastructure acknowledging it as the boundary. We've occupied the site for 36 years as a contributor and ratepayer to this region. We made a decision late last year to retire to Beaufort, but knowing that one of our boundaries was incorrect, we would need to replace our old garage, so we engaged a surveyor to undertake our topo survey. As a result, we discovered the boundary inaccuracies, particularly the Swindon Street boundary, which was now encroaching into each of our properties by around 6 metres in parallel to the fence line. This revelation was extremely disturbing, considering the new boundary was going through both of our houses. After consultation with our co-applicant and consultant, we decided to go through the process of correcting these anomalies. We understood and accepted the statute requirements and the process for the boundary corrections. For both parties, this meant we collectively were going to cover all costs involved, even the council costs. These costs are significant and to date are tens of thousands of dollars. We believe the council has a responsibility to acknowledge that the Swindon Street boundary has been the accepted boundary line since the town was first pegged for occupation around 1880. This is evidenced by the fact all services like water, power and phone are visible along this fence boundary line. Therefore, it is reasonable to expect we as the occupants of both these sections should believe the fence line was the true boundary. Important to know, there was no survey by council, Aurora or Chorus at the time they installed their infrastructure. Everyone has simply assumed that the fences or the hedges are on the legal road boundary, and they still do. If there had been a survey at the time, then the situation would not have arisen. We've read the report before you, and although the writer emphasises it is the owner's responsibility to identify boundaries, which may be applicable today, but certainly not at the time we lodged our building permit in 1989. We consider our application to be unique, but accepting the situation, we are not placing blame on any party. We've taken the attitude we need to rectify the situation and in good faith agree to pay all incurred costs. And because the council, in good faith, waives the payment for the land. The recommendation in the report to approve the road stopping is welcome and appreciated. We challenge it being subject to payment of the land valuation. Bottom line is we cannot afford to be hit with this land payment, considering we will have paid out tens of thousands of dollars just to correct and at no cost to you, the council. In closing, I ask that you carefully consider the points I've shared as you make your final decision. I believe that these insights will help lead to a fair, thoughtful outcome for everyone. Thank you for your time.
Stu, this will be your paper, so but I'll ask questions before we go into that, because it's public forum. So, councillors, any questions?
Excuse me.
Okay.
I think it might be better if you just wait for all three of us. I can.
Sorry, my apologies. It was 5 minutes, not each, but 5 minutes for everybody. But look, I'll give some leeway. But if you could keep it concise, please, Peter.
That's fine. Look, I'm obviously sure all the job that I'm the applicant for this process here, and I just wanted to reiterate that I agree with what Matt and what Matt's proposing here, and we just like to really ask for the council for some leniency. We understand that you can report an approach for the land exchange, and we would just like to request that that's not done. We're obviously willing to pay for the process, and we've put out a lot of cost to that. And of course, we're willing to pay for the rates going forward. You can also, I guess, read my notes as well. You've got that all there, so I'll read that and we look forward to any questions.
Okay, I'll just speak very briefly.
Thank you, Peter.
My notes. I just want to make the council aware of the sort of scale of financial hardship that my clients are going to be faced with. Normally the land is valued at going rate for residential land in Ophir. So we're talking up to $300,000. It's huge. I'm not talking small figures here. And the mortgages, they're going to be faced with a bill up to $100,000. Enormous cost. They simply cannot afford this, and they're still with the dilemma that if they cannot afford to pay, the land will be even further severely devalued by the discovery of their inverted health occupations, we know of their own. Relocation of both houses within the current legal boundaries on both sides is not feasible because they're both constructed into private, they can't be moved, and if they move, then they will be in a floodplain area. The clients are quite happy to pay for the not have considered process costs and legal survey and land accredited agents and statutory processes and council administration costs of about $35,000 alone. But in conclusion, although the council may legally be entitled to charge full market rates for the land, I ask that you exercise some degree of compassion at the time of your situation and waive the requirement for them to pay.
Thank you. Questions, councillors? Ludwig.
No, actually. No, it's building prior to the
It was treatment 1989 or 88, we purchased the property.
And pre-GIS.
It's obviously on the GIS now. Yeah, there is obviously the applications that have gone through for the renovations and things like that. Well, we've got, our house was renovated in the 1980s.
The last survey claim was 1880, James. Only record of the house.
And they've been trying to bring up building briefly.
There's building permits, it's the 4%. So we got a building permit in 1989. And the only question at that time was regarding the inundation. We had to prove that the last flood, which was 1978, we had to prove when that was, and we built the house 600 mils above that.
Neil?
Just a couple of points to clarify. So just so I got it right, the last building on your place was 89.
Yes, we
Last time a building consent was required,
Yes, building permits on
89. And for your section, last building activity that got a consent,
It was the carport in
2005.
yeah,
But was that you or was that the previous owner?
the previous owner.
Yeah. But in your case, the 89 was you. Yeah. All right, cool. And you said the services are in the formed part of the road.
Yeah.
So the only service there is water,
and telephone.
power and telephone. Yeah. Thank you.
When you actually see our boundary, you see the fence line on the road line itself, all services there. And if you can imagine 6 metres into our place, there's a parallel line that goes through our house and through Short Lomas. And that's the strip plan that we're talking about. And it's always been in that. It's always been what we've looked after, this trees, garden, things like that. It's always been that.
Tracy?
Just interested, how did you land on that value for those two parcels of land?
Basically, I've taken the average land value in home account over is about $400 per square metre. In Cromwell, Alexandra, it's 1,000 in subdivisions. So I've taken another figure and multiplied by the one. For the road. $400 a square metre times the area, which is at a very low end.
Tamer?
And sorry, just to clarify on Tracy's point, Peter, that's not an independent valuation. Obviously, it's not going to be worth necessarily $400 per square metre because it cannot be built on. So there might be a bit of variation to that and an independent valuation.
As that in my experience, the value is just take the value of the BLN in residential sections. They don't discount it for straight, they don't discount it for identified the occupied for years and years, they just pay the market rate. But the valuation is almost conveys.
I'll just note that when we leave public forum with your permission, Stu, I'll be asking Louise if she has any comments on those valuations, but in your time that wouldn't be appropriate. Did you have another question, Neil?
I do. Two things, just a quick calculation and based on the rating value for the land so far, the last one was done was 152. So I hear what you say about that. It's probably loose since then. It might be closer to 400, but it's going to be somewhere between the two figures, I expect. So for your property at 52, that the house has been there on that boundary for some time.
Since 90 years, yeah, that's 85 years.
Right. So if I get this right, then you're saying that on your property, that's been a boundary encroachment for 70, 80, how many whole ton of years. Yours is the more recent. But by the way, there's one that actually predates and goes back a long way. Understand a bit, I think.
Further questions of our guests? Okay, thank you. That was very, very helpful. For me at least, I'm sure to the rest of the council. Stu, it's now your paper. I'll hand over to you. Apologies, Stu. Confirmation of the minutes from our last meeting. If somebody would like to move them, thank you, Tamer. Seconded Lindley. All those in favour? Aye, against, carried. I was so eager not to run into somebody else's. And please, folks, remember your declarations of interests, that you here to do a job, and that if there's anything in your private life or your personal business life or whatever that could impact or could be seen to impact on your decision making today, please declare that and step away. And with that, and with Wayne's permission, I'll pass over to Stu.
Very much.
24.
It's all right, Rebecca's
.11.2 road stopping at Swindon Street, Ophir, Gareth and Louise.
Morning. At the meeting on the 9th of September, the Vincent Community Board considered the proposal to stop approximately 650 square metres of unformed legal road approaching Swindon Street and 317 square metres of unnamed unformed legal road on either side. The best representation is on figure 5, which shows the unnamed legal road is figure A, and then subsequently B, C, and D are the encroachments on Swindon Street. I think, do you want to say anything?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to comment on the statements about this being unique. While I have total sympathy for the people in this situation, this is not unique, and this council has considered a number of applications exactly like this and made decisions on this point, including on whether the land is purchased at valuation. So for clarity, when somebody buys a property, it is their responsibility to identify where the boundaries are. So while it might look like it's the fence line, and while the real estate agent might present it in that way, and I'm suspecting that the rules around that are slightly different now, and there's probably more responsibility here as well. It is the responsibility of the purchaser to actually understand what it is they're purchasing. So it's not necessarily within the fence lines of the property. The boundary is identified on the certificate of title or record of title, and that is absolute. And that is the boundary of the property. And then it's down to saying, where is that on the ground? And what has happened over the years, and I've seen this a number of times, is people do rely on fence lines, and when there are internal fence lines between properties, sometimes the whole street can be out. And we've had a number of experiences where people have approached us about this, and in some cases they say, yep, we understand that this is the case and we're happy with it, we're not going to do anything about it. And in other cases they say we want to remedy the situation and apply for either sorting the boundaries out between properties or road stopping. So the other situation where it is the responsibility, well, it's always the responsibility of the landowner and stuff, what we see is that building consent. So we receive a site plan and it shows where the boundaries are and where the location of that building is in relation to the boundaries. Again, the property owner needs to know where that boundary is, because we at council do not require a full survey every single time we receive a building consent. We have the understanding that the property owner understands where that boundary is and the distance. So when the building inspector goes out and looks at it and it says, if it says that the building is 3 metres from the boundary, and here's a site plan, they assume that the owner knows where that boundary is. So we've discussed this over the years as to whether we should be putting the cost of a full survey on people every single building consent, and don't think it's necessary. So there's a number of ways you can identify where a boundary is. One is survey pegs. Obviously, in situations where the survey is very old, it's not unlikely to be pegs. Another is to get a surveyor to do a boundary definition, either at purchase or at building consent. So that opportunity is there. That's probably all I need to say on that. In terms of the valuation, we haven't actually undertaken that, so we don't know what that looks like. We don't understand what the value is, so I can't comment on that. And the only thing I would say is you have a policy around this, a roading policy around selling the land at market valuation, and you have seen a number of decisions around that and some objection to that. And if there is to be a different way of dealing with that, it may be that we do that at a policy level. That's probably all our reason.
Thank you. We'll take one question. Any questions?
Now that this, now that this has been begun in terms of rectifying the boundaries, is there any obligation on the applicants to continue with this process if, for example, the market valuation came back at a price that they weren't willing to pay?
No, absolutely not. That's their decision.
Yeah. Same question. But the supplementary one to it,
Go on.
what will council do if they do that?
If they
They
not progress,
just walk away from it. What will,
but council won't do anything, but this isn't, as I said, this isn't particularly unusual.
No.
There are encroachments into road reserves in many places, and what we say to people when they identify that is, we're not going to do anything about this unless the land is needed for road purposes, and clearly the length of Swindon Street and the width of the road, that's not the case here.
so if we approve the recommendation today, the valuation's done, and the applicants get it and go, no, cancel, that's it, done. It is what it is.
Right.
But there is an issue going forward for some of the future, but it deals with the here and now. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and one of the comment I would make is that the applicant's comments about GIS and LIMS are 100% correct. Back then, we didn't do LIMS, and even when we started doing LIMS under the Building Act, until it showed the GIS aerial photography over the boundary, that didn't actually help people buying property. So it's still separately.
And I bet you, I would suggest that the 2005 thing just showed the boundary as being where the builder thought it was, which was the fence line. No one checked it, so, you know, everybody in good faith did all the right things, and in 1930 something, when that one was built, goodness knows what that was done, probably on with a quill or a football or something, but same situation. But the boundary would be represented, and look how it is. Yeah. All right, thank you.
Any more questions? Yeah. No. Option.
So going forward, now that this is actually being identified, is this going to affect the future value of the house, of the property?
I don't expect so, but I'd like to, we always speak it, I don't know, I'm not a valuer and I don't know. I think QB do their valuations on a desktop basis.
Yeah.
But, if you got, an independent valuation, they may, I think.
Thanks, Stu. I'm disappointed we don't have a value when it's a really fundamental part of this, but I guess we didn't want to undertake a valuation until we knew what was going to happen with the cost associated. Do Peter's figures trigger an allergic reaction to you, or do they sound about right? You're very experienced in this field.
I think they sound high, but
But it could be 300,000, sorry, it could be, give me a bit of paper. It could be 250, not 300,000 for the tip. It's still going to be in the hundreds of thousands, you would think.
To Councillor Ellie's point, given it is a strip of land that can't be built on, I don't know whether they just take a square metre rate or look at it and go, you know, for this piece of land that would be worthless.
Because in some regards, if you look at a residential section in Ophir and try to say, well, that residential section in Ophir is worth X because you could put a house on it, you can't do a thing with these strips of land.
No.
They are what they are. So the value that I'm really anxious about making a decision, because if we make a decision here today and go, yes, then we're on a pathway that we have no control over. We don't know whether it's been pulled by a pony or a 6 weeks. You know, the valuation could come back at 300,000, as Peter says, which I'm extraordinarily reluctant to progress. But it could come back at 40,000, which could change both my view and the applicant's views. I'm not sure. Sorry, that's. Yeah.
Am I right? Would it follow the procedure whereby we would have a valuation and the applicant would potentially get their own independent valuation?
That is correct.
Yeah. So there would be a discussion around said valuation before any agreeing of what it was. Yeah. Thank you.
I can't help but think that there's two options we've got left. One is to consider the recommendations. Two, you could park it on the table, say, and get the valuations done and see what we're dealing with. And then you can make a, from us here, we can make a fully informed decision, because you know, what you just said, your worship, that because it can't be built on, I think that what I understand what Mr. Dimmick's done with the $400, that's the worst case. There's a better case. That may not be palatable to the applicant, but at least then we can make an informed decision here. Without it, I don't think we can. And for the cost of evaluation in terms of the scheme of things is probably not that significant, is my gut view. But anyway.
And if I may, Stu, totally agree. and perhaps somewhere in this should also be, because we've got the choice today to pull a trigger. That valuation should go back to these folk with the question, do you wish to proceed?
Yeah.
Because, you know, and then I think I would like to see this formulated to the point that if we were to say yes, there would be an option, this is in the future, there would be an option C that would say on request of the applicants within 48 hours, this can be revoked. So if we say, well, it's $223,000 and we're going ahead with it, and because if we progress with the path, which I think is the right one, these folk will be taking a gamble, and it could be $100,000 gamble that the council's going to fall in their favour, or the council's going to go against them. I think they should have the opportunity to pull the cards off the table even then.
Beforehand, yeah.
Yeah, beforehand.
That's mine, yep.
That makes sense. Your floors are yours.
Yeah, just to clarify on the mayor's point, if we're to agree to option B at this point, then there would be an obligation on the applicant to continue with this process because we are approving all of those.
No.
So that's what I'm just clarifying.
Yeah, no, so there would be no obligation, they would progress if they chose to or not.
Okay, I've read that wrong. Okay, forget about the last.
But the key thing about that is that for us to make that decision in the first place, the key thing is we need that information, I think.
Correct.
And usually, typically, I think in the past, we haven't always seen the numbers.
But the previous ones that we've had that are very similar to this, we have seen what those numbers are.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
We have.
Yeah.
So they progressed the book further
Yeah.
down the
Right.
line.
Yeah.
And we've got valuations in this.
Yeah.
Now, I can just make one comment in, I don't know the exact size of the lots, but effectively whenever the purchasers purchase those lots, let's say it was for 1,000 square metres, that's what they paid for. Effectively, you're increasing the lot sizes by the effective 650 odd square metres. So if you think about that in relation to, should have paid that upfront.
If I may though, Stu, that's fine in theory, but these people bought a block of land that was plainly bordered by Swindon Street and everything else. And I think, you know, I'm a lawyer and I probably would have fallen into that trap in 1989, but I think that's a debate for another day.
Well, I think the key thing about it is that 1989 and 2005, yes, you would have. Today, no,
you wouldn't.
You shouldn't today.
I guess
Best chance today.
why you wouldn't today, because our information's better.
Yeah. And I can dredge back my memory and find you some cases in Bannerburn Road where people relocated properties, all sorts of things, and then whoops, that's in the middle of the road. The road's in the wrong place, so in someone else's house. You know? So Louise is right, it's not uncommon, but
And that's something we have to consider too, is if we do make a decision that goes against our policy, what floodgates are we potentially open for the future?
And I just want to also highlight the contentious one that we had done in the Teviot, and we stuck with policy for that. And, you know, that was obviously against what the owners of that property wished, but we stayed with the policy. So,
We get the values.
and yeah, we'd had the values, but that was a
So
contentious.
where are we going to land?
I think we should come to the valuations.
Yeah.
It's too important to me to not know those numbers, because at the moment, with the number that's been promulgated, I know where I'm in it, but I don't know how, with all due respect, Peter, I don't know.
That's cool. Then nothing is going to change for you. Then you need to be secure. You there.
Will they go to sell?
yeah, till they go to
Nothing changes, actually, that's exactly the point. The next purchaser, if they get it, and we'll get an aerial photograph with the boundaries overlaid, and we'll understand the encroachment situation, and they will then be in a position where they can progress that or negotiate that or do something different.
So have we been picking up rates on that legal land?
No.
We've been picking up rates on the legal property, which is not
The legal boundary.
the
Not
fence
the
ones.
But it wouldn't-
On the legal boundary there.
1688 square metres. Well, do you want something, do we have to move, we're going to leave it on the table? Yeah. So what, could we move that we leave it on the table pending valuation information?
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Oh, Wayne's-
Wayne's already here, he's on the table.
Can I just clarify, it's that if we can leave it on the table pending evaluation, that will be up to the applicants whether they choose to progress with evaluation or not? Or is that something that we are going to do?
But that is how the report's written about what I'm hearing you say is that the council would request evaluation at the council's cost to inform you.
Yeah.
Yes.
In the scheme of things, it's going to be not much. We've got.
Where you go, mate? What do you got?
That the item be left lie on the table until evaluation can be obtained for the.
Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Scott. Second.
I'll move that.
I think that Tim, you've got to second it.
What's it now?
I could do it, but someone who's not going to put that in that.
Tracy, yes.
Why shut up?
Second.
That's just trying to be helpful.
All in favour?
Oh,
Against? Carried. Thank you very much.
it's loading the gun, Tony.
Folks, I know it's going to be more indecision and not knowing, but I think that's the focus going forward.
Thanks for your time today.
I appreciate your time. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Righty, ho, thank you, Stu. It's a good paper to get off with, that's for sure. That brings us to another one of some interest. And we welcome our community board chairs to come and speak to us, and I'll go in the order that it's on the bit of paper. I'm not sure what order it's been curated by, but anyway, Hannah Harrison is Cromwell Community Board Chair, of course. It's an alphabetical order.
There you go.
HDC.
Start with a C.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, I knew there had to be, I knew Wayne would have a reason. Like,
He's from Belfast.
yeah, that's why. Welcome, Anna.
She's here as an entity. Thanks, let me apologise for my voice. I've managed to pick up, as you do when you work in primary education, some lovely folks. I hear that there's some others around your table. I'm not informed of this today, but I appreciate the time and opportunity to come and speak with you. I know that you're all listen and go, she's just beating the same drum and saying the same stuff, and I am just beating the same drum and saying the same stuff, which I'm hoping to keep uppermost in your minds as you make a decision about district-wide funding of services and functions of council today, and as that moves forward into the conversation that will come after it, which is about how delegations will ensure, if we move into a very different looking model, that our community boards still have the opportunity to have a voice in what's happening in their local communities, and particularly with some of the big ticket stuff that's going to be happening around, whether that's major infrastructure works or whether that's some of the developments that may happen over the next few years. I was mindful that when, as we sit around this table and the table that I sit around in Cromwell, that there's no guarantees that the group of people who are sitting here will still be here the next time there's an election, whether that's their own choice to stand down or whether the community chooses to vote a different way. So I think it's going to be really important as we progress through these changes to representation, districtisation, and delegations, that we put in place things that ensure that whoever's sitting around the table, that those voices and that local community voices heard, and is really important. So thank you for this opportunity. It does feel the right way around that we're having this conversation about district-wide move to a more district. I'm trying not to say districtisation because I know it's not a real word. I can't.
You can use it. We know what you mean.
I know. I'm really trying hard to find another way to say it, but today with the brain that I brought with me, I can't. I apologise for that. So the board understands the need for further functions and services to move to a district funded model to make costs more equitably distributed. The board's concerns are not a position that's contrary to that move. So it's not the board's position as we've got into this conversation isn't no, districtisation is a terrible idea. It's if we move to this model, how do we ensure that for all of our wards that voice is kept uppermost, that local voice is still a really important part of decision making. So the points the board wishes to have considered in the conversation about the role of boards and the important of board voice in the decision making about ensuring that the significant endowment land holdings in the Cromwell ward are managed in a way that maximises the benefit to Cromwell, and that the use of the proceeds of this land is planned for really carefully, and that should be something that is driven by the Cromwell Community Board, and as well as those decisions about what will be spending decisions that are made as that land is sold. We get one shot at it. While we still own it, we can be planning and thinking and making decisions about how we use it. Once it's sold, once it's gone, it's gone. And that significant land holdings that we have there, it's really important that as we move forward that our community is assured that the way we're moving and how it's going to be used has been the most carefully considered decisions. And I'm aware that the council would always seek to make that, but I think it's really important to keep on making sure that this is uppermost in our thinking, so that as we move from this decision, however it ends up, to the next decision, which is about what the delegations look like, that those things are really considered. So that main point of the board's voice on major Cromwell projects and the maintenance and changes to any level of service must still be heard with defined and tangible influence. This must be written as a way of working between community boards and councils. And I know that that's part of the delegation's conversation, but it comes out of the decision you make today. So I think that as we moved through the consultation process around districtisation, that there seemed to be a bit of a shift in the way that that was being talked about. So I think that that is being more thought about and is more upfront in the thinking that's going on at the moment. One of the things that we have asked for as a community board is that even when we don't have a resolution that needs to be made, or when there's a workshop that needs to be held about something that's going to be a decision made by council, that is included within our agenda so that it's recorded on our minutes that we've had that conversation. And that shift for us is one of the shifts that we think will be really important if we move to a more district funded model, so that we ensure that that's recorded and we know that those things have happened. Things happen in workshops or happen in informal settings before and after meetings. They're not always minuted, and therefore that voice, there's no assurance that the voice that the community board has given will show up at council. For the board to truly represent our community, we believe it's essential that with council funds, functions, services and property being managed by the district rather than the ward, that we continue to have the ability to feed into this decision making. This has to be at a wider scope than being consulted with during annual and long-term plan preparation. It needs to be an ongoing conversation. A board-based opinion must be included in reports to council for board-based projects, and the board must receive formal reports or have things so that input can be sought at meetings before a report goes to council for decision. I know me, Tim and I have spoken, and we have a mutual understanding that the community voice is best heard through our community boards, otherwise you don't know who we're speaking to. The boards are the people who represent our communities, so I know that view is shared. The use of informal updates rather than including updates in meetings means that we've got to, is not the way that we think we should be going forward. The last time I met with you, we talked about legal opinions around endowment land and what that Cromwell Borough looks like. And thank you. We have been listened to on that, and we have that advice has been sought, and we will look at that and think about how that fits for how we move forward, along with all of the other advice that's been sought over many decades around endowment land and Cromwell and what it means for the Cromwell Borough, which is now, of course, the Cromwell Township. So thank you for listening and coming to us with that opportunity to meet and clarify the voice that we wanted you to ask that for them. The board seeks to ensure that the true value of endowment land will be realised through careful development. And I know in the last time I spoke here that there was, I was given that very definite feeling that, of course, that is the view of council as well, that we would, council doesn't sit to gain if they sell it off cheaply or if they sell it off in a hurried way. We all benefit from this being done really carefully. So we seek to continue having that assurance that a careful plan, including the voice of the community, will be in place for how endowment land is developed, and the proceeds of that are applied to projects in the Cromwell ward, which we know may include some of the large infrastructure projects that are needed to comply with legislation around water and other services. So we are aware that that is a way that it could be used. We just want to make sure that our voice is there as those decisions are made. So the feeling of the board is that we should be responsible for the development of this plan alongside council and for that management of endowment land. We still believe that our ward is unique within the CODC because we represent that largest single town and have there are fewer, very small communities that we are servicing than most of our other wards. Yes, we still have some of those, but we are a more geographically all the way where we sit through the other side of the gorge makes it quite a unique position. We think that we need to really consider what the scope of a move to a district-wide funding model brings, because at face value it could encompass sweeping changes to the way that community boards function and interact with the council, because there's a range of concurrent things happening with the changes that have come around with the representation review and the discussions that are yet to come around delegations. I think that it's really important that we keep these conversations really open and frank so that we make sure that our wards being served by community boards feel valued through their community board and their function within the wider council setting. We still really want to be mindful of any unintended negative consequences that may come from this with reduced voice from boards or reduced functions of boards, and so just to keep that uppermost in our minds. So the role of community boards, we need to consider the role of community boards and providing community voice in genuine ways that feed into our council decision making. We need to ensure that endowment land sales and proceeds from these is managed and planned in a strategic manner to realise the true value for our community and wider council, and that the interests from at the forefront of that conversation. And the board, along with the Cromwell community, would like an assurance that representation and local voice will not be diminished as a result of changes to the district funding model, and that the very real needs of a town with a rapidly growing and changing population will be given full consideration by the board. I feel through the consultation process that there's been lots of really good conversation. So we're starting to have a feeling that this is being listened to us and we are part of the conversation as we move along. And I appreciate that that's been a lot of work from executive team members, me, Tim, and the Cromwell ward councillors to ensure that that is how the conversation has felt for us. We still know for our community that there's a lot of very strong feelings and probably a lot of distrust around what this means. As I said right at the beginning, we are aware of the need to move to a district funded model, at least for some functions within council. We just want to ensure that as these changes are made, or if these changes go through at this point, that the view, the voice of our local communities, including the Cromwell Community Board, are still very much part of decision making around the state. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Anna. That's an extremely well thought through and brilliantly delivered, as always, submission. And like you, I've been constantly thinking, because I've been very clear and will remain very clear, the voice of the boards. If the change happens and the communities go, what's the point? As you and I have discussed, we will have unelected people claiming to be the voice of Cromwell, the voice of Roxburgh, etc., which would be a disaster. But I think in the Cromwell situation, and I've been ticking over a couple of ideas, it's for another day, but I thought I'd put it up here now. You know, I would be, when we come to the discussion, if today progresses down a distributisation path, to say that not only would any decision that council made that was pertinent to one ward have a recommendation from the board, perhaps we should be looking at something like any decision that goes against that has to have in the motion the reason why, not just, hey, nah. And in terms of the endowment land, because it is a unique situation, my thought, and again, this is way ahead of time, but you've raised it, and so thinking I've got is perhaps there would be a committee that would have the mayor, the Cromwell Council, and 2 community board members that sit in that space that then recommends to the board, that then recommends to council. That's the kind of level that I think we need to have.
Through this conversation, because I know that before the end of this year, you're going to be coming back to the delegations conversation, that those are the sorts of things we need to be talking about. I mean, we think about the structure that's been established as a governance structure for the Cromwell Town Centre, which includes that needs the community board voice for decision making before it comes to council. It may be that for those other big projects that we write in these delegations, that is a structure that needs to be established, which is sort of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So I think that there's lots of opportunities here for us to get this really right. But there's also a lot of risk and mitigating that risk and moving forward in a way that assures our communities that we're not doing stuff to them. We still want to be taking our community on a journey with us, and that there are some real benefits of looking at this in a different way. But we need to also manage the risks, because there's never benefits without risks, and we all know you can never go into anything new without having to balance those two things together.
Tracy.
Yeah, and just on one of your points, I'm not sure if I quite, was the no informal updates? What did you mean by that?
Oh, so, you know, before and after meetings, we often have ET time, and some of the big things that are happening, we'll get an informal update from executive team members about what's going on.
Yeah.
So what we've asked is to make sure that our community can see that there's been a conversation, but that's included in our meeting. So our update on the Gear estate, our update on all progress. There's no resolution, there's no recommendation, there's no decision that we're making, but that update is included in our meetings.
And we've started doing that.
And we've started that.
We had bad habits that we've broken.
Yeah, and I think that for all of our communities, that makes this much more transparent.
Absolutely. Just understand everything you're saying, but you've got elected members on your board as well. Like, your voice isn't lost. I mean, that came out in our distributisation. There's only one person from the Minnetonka, one from Tibet, but the voice of your board is taken to this table. And I just hope that while you've got the elected members you have on your board, I hope you never feel that it's not, because that's why you're there.
I absolutely agree with that. But remember, for our ward and for the Vincent ward, we go down to having one councillor on our boards as well from the next election with representation review. So for those bigger slightly bigger communities, that's a real reduction in that two-way voice, because we go from having the millions of them sitting around your table.
You'll make sure you get the right one to start. We've got to ask those questions. There's one here.
That's the same for Vincent, is that there's only going to be one person. If they miss a meeting, and we all know that people, for whatever reasons, occasionally miss meetings. If they disagree with what the board said, then there isn't somebody else to also pick up our view.
So perhaps at the start of the next term, consideration should be given that the council appointee has a delegate. If they can't make the meeting, the delegate does.
Yeah, and that's probably a reason.
Wayne shaking his head. We'll work that through. That's for another day.
Wayne's going, oh.
They are a public meeting. Others can go.
For you, Wayne.
Well, others can.
Both solutions for the floor.
Others can. Another councillor could sit, if nothing else, in the public space. Yeah, sorry, we're getting way ahead. We shouldn't be. Yeah.
I just think I want to point out to my esteemed colleague, Councillor Duncan, that the chances of us making sure we get the right people is not up to us. But that aside, Anna, do you think that in hindsight that maybe dropping back to one councillor Had we known and thought about the digitalisation side of things, we might have been less likely to do that in one bold step.
I think that's a wonderful.
I know.
Thing. I don't know, and I understand the reasons for going through that representation review process, and our board with 5 sitting around rather than 7 sitting around will still be a really strong group and a really strong voice. I think it's just making sure that that conduit, that communication links between the two tables is really strong, and I think that as long as they're, you know, we have to trust our community that they will elect capable people around both of these tables in order to do that. I mean, it's people who are passionate about their communities and put their hands up to represent them, so.
Well, that's one thing that worries me, Anna, and same for you, how gutting it was that the Cromwell community under our current way of doing things had to have a by-election after the election.
I know.
It was just shocking.
And then for so many people to come out of the woodwork for the election.
Yeah.
It's just mind bending, isn't it? You just go, oh.
Well, if nothing else comes.
For some of us not having to campaign and just go, oh gosh, this is
Tell me
not,
about it.
you're not putting yourself in that, but it shouldn't happen like that. That's not how our boards or our council should be elected. That should be the context every time.
You'd hope that the positive that will come out of this is that the wider community will realise actually ultimately they have the power and the control to do what they want to do and learn. Just as we at this table learn every time we have to consider things, we pick up new stuff and learn things. So the community has a responsibility as well to do that.
And that comes back to risks, benefits and opportunities. So there's an opportunity now that will get people who really want to stand in, and there's a risk because you've got people who stand up and will issue and think that they're going to be able to come in and make those changes, and of course governance doesn't do that.
Just happy? Right, Anna, thank you for coming down. I know you're a very busy person, but what you've done today just epitomises the importance of the boards and good leadership and good people on those boards and the voice that you bring to us today.
This one was really important for me to be here face to face, because this is a really big decision. Last time I zoomed in, you see I shouldn't probably be sitting in a room here. I'm fighting to get better. I get on a flight to London on Saturday morning, so.
Oh, wow.
It's a long trip to Marston.
It's organised from.
Well, go well, travel well. That'll be working.
Thanks, Anna.
Thank you, Anna.
Appreciate time.
All right, according to alphabetical order, next up is Norman from the Certificates Board. Kia ora, Norm. Kia ora. Thanks.
Okay.
How's your voice today?
Getting better.
Good, I'm glad to hear that.
Come last Thursday and it was a mistake.
Oh, that's all right from my perspective. You on this side. No, I have some concerns for you. I'm glad to see you.
I can't, when I don't need to speak, I can. So thanks for the opportunity to talk to you about the decision we're making today. Very fortunate that Anna could articulate Cromwell's position, because Tibet's position is very similar in terms of our concerns around maintaining our voice at this table. Short and sweet, I would say that the Tibet Community Board is nervous about the impact on our ratepayers of the digitalisation of the remaining council services that were, or activities that were considered, or you guys are considering today. And should digitalisation go ahead, we will support option 2. Option 2 is the one where our soiling policy is the key factor in that decision, and we wouldn't be, I guess, called upon to sponsor the rest of the soiling policy in the district. We're keen to know how ours and other reserves will be used in the future. We don't have lots of property like Cromwell do to ring fence or anything like that, but what reserves we have, we would like to see retained for use in our ward. And lastly, we'd also be keen to know how any LTP or CapEx projects, particularly relating to capacity allowing growth, would get prioritised in the future. Again, this comes back to the, I guess, us being able to have an equitable position at the table in terms of promoting growth in a ward that needs it. From Vincent wards are getting it whether they want it or not. But we actually are looking for a right plan, most very strong system in terms of what the bigger picture. So, and basically that's about it. It's one of those changes that has to come. Our community is going to support it a lot. I couldn't tell you, we had a reasonable turnout at the public meeting, and the show of hands there was an equitable sort of view on whether digitalisation is going to be a benefit to the community. The results of the survey on one hand, they showed the same. So, I guess, back to what Anna says, it's really important that the advocacy process is given a great degree of thought when you come to making the decisions and follow it on.
Thanks, Mark.
I think it's better like this, mate.
Appreciate it. Is it all you have to say or all you can say?
Well, I think that's your name. But,
Councillors, questions for me?
It's about the same to Anna. And the many title the same. I do think we have a big say in our community boards. And the time when I've been at this table, whether it's Councillor Jeffries or Zoe and Leo, you've had exceptional council. And I think that's the key for small communities, to really make sure they can put people up that bring that voice to the table. And the tier has been very, very fortunate in the total time I've been at this around this table. And I see no reason why it shouldn't continue. So the advocacy will live.
yeah, I agree 100%. We've been very fortunate, and hopefully in the future that will remain. As was raised before with Anna, a level of, I guess, apathy amongst the community when it comes to pulling people up for candidates at the community board level. We are evidence of that. We didn't have to go through a by-election, but maybe we should have.
Yeah. Let's go straight again.
So, and again, it's sort of like when you come to putting policies in place around how the ratepayers' money is going to be spent, but consider those sorts of things. What's going to attract people to put their hand up, become part of this team?
Nigel. Thank you. You touched on the option making an exception for the Teviot because of the pool, but you would accept that Teviot ward is a net, quite a heavily net beneficiary of the distributisation policies that are already in place. And even if we voted for full distributisation, Teviot would still be heavily a net beneficiary of the distributisation process.
I don't agree with that. I mean, roading and water. But when you're looking at what I term as the social infrastructure around our halls and the recreational reserves and so forth. We've done very well to make sure, with our community groups that these facilities have remained in use and, well supported.
Yeah.
So it's
Which I,
it's slightly different.
I'm not,
Is that answering what you're?
yeah, I'm just wanting to,
Yeah.
to articulate the point that it's a swings and roundabouts game.
Yeah, and I mean, there's two different things. Infrastructure is infrastructure. You can't do it without. Social infrastructure is another aspect that the community can either support or not.
But we're talking about dollars.
We've got a golf course that's used every day, similar to Clyde.
Yeah, thank you.
And that is
Good golf course, too.
Don't know that it's solid.
No, I'm almost a bugger for a slicer. I hate it.
I think it's quite unique.
Any other questions, folks?
Yeah.
No, Neil, thank you.
Norm, you got a pretty good turnout in your public meeting down here.
Yeah.
And you got a pretty good response to the submissions you got as well. Probably, if you look across the district, probably better than most.
Yeah.
That shows a reasonably engaged community, or would you expect more people at your meeting or more submissions?
I was hoping that we would have hundreds of people there. Given the level of feedback we were getting around different tables. And it was constant feedback. It wasn't just the odd conversation.
So with what you expected to what we got, what did we miss? Did we miss something in terms of trying to get people engaged? I don't expect you'll have the answer. You want some thoughts that I must think about for the future, because that's the bit that this whole process gets me. We got a lot of people, a lot of noise. When it comes to the submissions, they came mostly from one place, because of what I'll talk about later on. But you know, I would have thought we'd have far more feedback.
From my short experience and of being on the board, what I've seen is that the Teviot is notorious for not responding to surveys. They would rather public meetings rather than one-on-one sessions like the drop-in session. And it was good to see that we didn't get a turnout like we did. The level of conversation, I thought we would have had more people.
And if I can just add to that, I think we often get the same people coming. So
Which is,
we get the same people coming, yeah.
it's still 34 out of 49
Yeah.
went to the meeting, you know,
Yeah.
I know there's no direct correlation,
You think?
but that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Like in terms of people that turned up to your public meeting,
Yeah.
34 submissions, that's a pretty good strike
I
rate.
think we've proven too that our community, like Norman just said, our community really responds to a public meeting. That's what they expect and that's what they like, and it works for us.
It was a really good meeting.
Yeah,
It was interesting when we had the one-on-one session for
rates.
rates. People would walk in the door and when they found out it was a drop-in session, not a public meeting, we turned around and walked out.
Really? Wow.
And that's just the nature of the beast.
Whereas in other wards, the public meeting wasn't as well supported. So I think a hybrid model suit the different wards is definitely something that needs to be.
Yeah.
And
That will take
that's because, so when you're looking at how the voice is put out there, we've got the ability to have a public meeting. Our community's opinion through to this table. That's part of that process.
Absolutely. Martin?
The whole of the discussion today is almost looking into the future and how we manage the change around what we were just thinking we're going to make. And it interests me that when we start doing the hybrid in our consultation process and things like that, I think one of the leadings what I'm going to take away from this is that we need to take a hard look at our farmers and how we do engage in a broader field. You know, you say, you know, you get 49 people turn up to the public meeting and the public meetings are the popular thing. What's your comments on It's the old school rule situation, it's the same places making the same mountains. Are we really representative?
That's a good question. A real good question because it is the same people.
Yeah.
It is the same people. But if you look at the community as a whole, and you have, you can take a cross section of the community groups. The people that are running those community groups are the same people.
Yeah, and that's worked out, so. It's like, you know, that your club, they might have 20 members, but only gets 3 who does the work.
Yeah.
It's the same wherever I go. I go to AGMs, et cetera, all around the district. It's the same everywhere. Here's the doers.
And I think if they're the representation of the community, they are a representation of the actually care about what's right and wrong.
It's not their fault.
No,
Yeah, they're doing.
other ones who ends up, and other ones who you need to listen to right and wrong.
Yeah. Well, it's the only one who can.
Yeah, and they will give an opinion. They may counter to your opinion, they might just, they will give an opinion of a group of people that are around there.
But it also makes it hard around this table when we have the biggest decision we'll ever have to make. I did the presentation 14 times. We did 4 meetings at night. We did it online. We did everything we could. And 1.7% of our population bothered to tell us what they thought. And heavily weighted in one demographic. So the young people of our communities need to have a look at these things. Anyway, we're probably drifting a little bit.
Yeah. So thanks for that.
Norm, appreciate you coming up and for everything you do in the Tibet Valley. Thank you very much.
Should have included library fines came back in place and that would have got some people woken up.
Okay. Righty ho. Speaking of young people, Jaden Crom. Yeah, welcome. Now, Jaden's here as Deputy Chair of the VCB because, of course, Madam Chair of the VCB is sitting at council. So Jaden's been leading this and leading it very well. Thank you, Jaden.
Okay. So I had thought that, Anna would really cover off a lot of the details on those concerns, especially in their teaching background. I've got a background of social services and my presentations and language is a lot more emotive than I think most. So slightly different style of presentation. Right. So as outlined in the attached report, the Vincent Community Board agreed to support digitalisation in principle on the condition that recommendations within the report presented to us were implemented in some meaningful way. These included making submissions to council, monitoring council services, and acting as a liaison on key projects and activities. While the status quo has served our community well in the past, rate increases of 18 to 33% and the projection of the debt ceiling, that the debt ceiling will be reached early in the next term, means that we've come to the conclusion that change is necessary. It's better to embrace change now while we have the chance, rather than being forced to do it later because we waited too long. Some have argued that our current system only accounts for 18% of rate intake, so why bother changing it? But that 18% of pools, parks and museums doesn't tell the whole story. For example, at our last meeting, we were asked to spend $5 million upgrading Molyneux Stadium, $15 million to rebuild it. This cost would sit with Vincent, the same way Ice and Line project upgrades have, despite the fact the services benefit to the full district. Currently, we have reserves and assets to handle such projects, but what happens when we don't? And each board continues to operate in their own silos. The negative impact on rates will worsen. Anyone that has spent time that came up knows that it's not big ticket items that fill up. It's little $5 and $10 items that leave you scratching your head at the checkout. If these changes are enacted, we will lose financial oversight within the boards, but we will still have a stronger voice within the system compared to many other community boards across the country. This was clear at the Local Government New Zealand Community Board Conference, where many boards are struggling to survive beyond the next election or stay relevant within their communities. My recent experience as part of the project group for the Riverside Park has proven that even without the financial sway, we have a real opportunity to continue to play a key role within our communities. But with the positives also comes the risks of change. It has been mentioned that we don't have enough detail on what becomes of us if this goes ahead. While that is true, we must also recognise that while we speak of one district, we also need to start looking at ourselves as one team. We need to ensure that we continue to work together through this process and not get caught up in an us versus them mentality. Whether you sit at this table one of ours, all of our declarations stated that we would execute in the best interest of Central Otago. Our view is that this is in the best interest of Central Otago. It has been implied that we have supported a position that goes against the interests of the community that we represent, and that we don't, that we haven't thought through the endowment land situation. Let's be clear, this has been factored into our decision making. The idea that spending this money on districtised services or infrastructure that benefits the ward can only be made at a community board level doesn't make sense when we still have the ability to work with council on issues affecting our areas. This is a prime example of where we can work together for the betterment of our communities. Yes, this carries some risks, but we believe that positives outweigh the negatives. Finally, for those watching who have submitted in favour of option 3, it's critical to remember that regardless of today's decision, localism done well and unity is what will drive this district forward. Our governance structure may look different tomorrow, but the people around this table care just as much as community board members do and are just as local as us. It's time we start peddling this rocket in the same direction.
Thank you, Jamie. Questions, councillors? You got your quizzical face on, Neil?
Oh, yeah, just, Jade, just pick up your last comment. Do you not think we've been paddling the walker in the same direction up until now? Or is that just sort of a saying, keep doing it, but do it better?
I think you're doing it a little better.
Yeah. I thought you meant.
I think when you've got a situation where you've got these pools operating, especially to Connell and Alex, it makes more sense to be doing it together in just by sense than continuing to operate independent or individually.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'll just question for you. Obviously, you didn't grow up in Vincent. You grew up in a small community. A passionate community. How do you see districtisation or into smaller outlying communities when you're deputy chair of quite a big community?
I think that I still have my nan telling me about all the negatives of what happened with the original amalgamation. So I hear all about it growing up. I think this is going to be really good for those small communities because we've already seen it with distributisation in the past. And I think as long as those communities keep electing people like yourself to be that strong place.
What you saying?
Same as I think you work very strong voices around this thing and you're bringing your community's voice here. And you do a really good job at convincing the others around this table that have larger numbers to support the community. It's always fun.
It's something that don't pay attention no matter what.
I think that's a fire service thing. He doesn't have to shout out the team against fire service.
Yeah, but I guess that's one thing that in this discussion, we in the media started our community board and have been very strong for many terms. And you go back to the great Mike Downing and the Barry Deckers and all that, and I don't feel we've ever missed out.
I don't think we even missed out.
No. So I struggle when we think our community doesn't get taken on the journey, the council overrides it, but I just, everything's done away.
I think if that was the case, then you would have got rid of the Manito and Tennant Valley community boards and wards community representation review. But you just kept them, which shows that this table does think that those communities are important individuals.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a 5 ago call. Distracting on, sorry. We talked to Norm about engagement and you mentioned about the younger boys and you made that observation that you're trying. What's the world we got to do to get it? Because it ain't there, is it? Well, it's not there in the numbers it needs to be for the future.
No, it's not there in the numbers it needs to be, but I think you're dealing with a population that, one, it's gone with a lot of misinformation through social media, who look at anyone around this table or a community board table with a really big lack of trust. And I think people are so busy just trying to survive that the idea of thinking beyond their own household is a really difficult thing to do. I do think something that could help, and something I spoke to other young elected members about when up at the local government conference, was the idea of having a youth council. Within there, we currently have one, and Alex run through the youth trust, and I believe Cromwell might still have one, David.
Yes.
So, council, Rob?
Not a council.
But I do think that the idea of having that actually be through council itself would be much better than sitting where it currently sits.
Yeah. So make like using the mayor's task force for jobs is a good example of how that can make a difference. That if you want to, maybe a youth council to work, it's probably needs that sort of, what's the word? Power behind it.
Something to look at for next term.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Jaden. Appreciate the mahi you've done on this.
Sure, thanks, Jen.
All right, report writers, Saskia. That was excellent. Oh, just while you're coming up, Saskia, I ran Rob Haslett, the chair of the Maniatoto Community Board today, just to confirm their position, and in the usual succinct Robert Haslett way, said fairly neutral.
Yeah, neutral.
What does that mean?
Fairly neutral.
It's up to you two.
Kia ora, Saskia. Welcome, and firstly, can I thank you and your team and all the staff for the mahi that's gone into this. It's been a massive undertaking. I think it's been the biggest consultation we've done, certainly in my time as mayor. So thank you for that. Let's get into it.
Thank you very much, and especially acknowledgement to the comms team. I know you really started pretty old, especially during this report, so thank you. I won't say too much, councillors. I think the report is pretty straightforward, and you'll see that we had quite good engagement right across the month. We did have 336 formal submissions. You heard from the verbal submitters last night on their views. And with the drop-ins across the district, we had some really good engagement there. So we have done a full report. If you have any particular questions on it, you need to take it, let us know. I'll start with the recommendation today. You see that we've read that work your decision today.
Okay, so what I intend to do, council, is another way I like to run this. We will have questions and questions only, if there are any. And then following that, we'll go around the room and just have hear what everybody thinks as a start of 10. Then we'll pull that over from there, and however long it takes, we'll come to a conclusion, whatever that conclusion may be. So firstly, questions for Saskia. Always the sign of a very good report.
Well, I had one about one of the reports, but I won't bring it up. It was just about halls in the Maniatoto being why in the discussion document that the TV paid so much because it was earthquaking our halls, and we hadn't decided on it.
No, that's a really good point, councillor. So we have taken this modelling has been taken from what we knew from the last long-term plans. You're absolutely correct that the cost for the Maniatoto could all boards could well change depending on what decisions are made in this long-term plan. So that's really good. We discussed the best out of it.
Yeah, and I was at pains at every one of the 14 presentations I gave to say that these numbers are based on what we know as of now. That it may well not stay the case that all 5, because at the moment there is a decision in the LTP that all 5 will be fixed up, but government changes or the next LTP. Bloody Anne Harrison's giving me the both. Might change that. Cheryl.
I've got a couple of questions with regard to the report. When you said this, 336 submissions, we only saw the submissions of 262.
That will be because now, quickly, that will be because they've just said what October but haven't necessarily comments. Is that right? Yes.
But there's actually 2 in there that are in that don't have a comment. So how come that So
come on up, Deb.
I'll bring the expert who compiled the report.
what was your question about? Well, I noticed that there are some in here that have got no comment beside them. And for like this person here, 194, there's no comment. It's still make it into here.
There was probably just an error. If there wasn't a comment, those shouldn't have been there. Those comments, so those people who didn't have comment should not have been in that. So that's why they're not included in the number of comments, but the total number includes everyone, whether or not they commented or didn't comment.
We normally do that, we do that in the LTP, we don't see them, we just leave out everybody that doesn't make a comment. Did we do that in the last one? When there was about eight
No, I
hundred
think-
something,
I think we had every single one
it
of
was
them.
about 800 and something rather submissions. And I thought we saw every single one, even if they didn't have a comment. I could be wrong, I might not remember.
It's probably something that we should make sure we're pretty standard on. Can you recall, Tracy?
Find the comments.
And I know with the road, the speed limit side of things, we only saw the comments.
Okay, so maybe that is how we've done it, and we probably wouldn't have noticed or remembered if we didn't.
And I guess, really why we've done that is it's because particularly it's the comment that made.
Things aren't good.
Need to draw your attention to, so that would have been why we, filter it in that way, because the responses for people that have raised it, has included that in the full analysis, you can see that. In that, is this something that councillors are wanting ongoing to see every submission regardless of whether or not there's a comments?
Yeah, no, I just was surprised at that, I don't know, I was just looking at the numbers and thinking, that was really poor.
I think it's something for future consideration, probably a distraction for today. It's well raised though, because for me, I go through, I look at everything and I look at the names.
Yeah.
And so if I'm saying, so-and-so said such and such, I probably should know that as opposed to just a raw number, but that's probably a cordetto for another day. That's great. Yeah, let's do that.
So then there's another one, sorry, I do look at the names too. And there's one person that seems to have managed to make 2 submissions.
Stephanie.
Yeah. So how did that happen?
If there are 2 separate email addresses, it is possible. Sometimes people submit as a business, and then they submit as an individual, or sometimes they'll submit an organization. But if someone registers twice with 2 different emails, it is possible.
There were a couple too with slightly different spellings of the name and had submitted.
So realistically, that means the system's flawed. If you've got 2 emails, we can apply, or lots of people have 2 emails and could have applied several.
And this,
Kind of distorts the result.
Like, we haven't seen this be a huge issue, but it would happen on occasion. It is possible.
but we're awake to it because I noted that too and went, okay, well, that's one point. Yeah.
But then there was also the issue of all the people in Cromwell that didn't manage to get their submission in because they were blocked out of the system.
Well, we accepted, I think, 96 hard copy submissions. So we had a huge number of hard copies, and so we always have those available. And anyone who would contact us that had any issues with Let's Talk, we have emailed copies of the submission form. So we try to make it as easy as possible.
What we found, I had lots of people come up to me and complain that they tried, they got frustrated and they gave up. I had one lady go into the service centre and she said your system's broken. They said you're happy to do it and they couldn't get her online. Now she's retired, so she's able to go into the service centre. A lot of our community work outside of, I'm just talking about Cromwell, the Cromwell Ward. They work in Queenstown, Monica, they can't get into the service centre. And they got frustrated and they just said, so we missed people. We say we want to we say that we want to engage. When they do try and engage, they get frustrated, they can't get online. They're locked out of the system.
I wasn't aware that wasn't brought to my attention during
Email sent to staff and the file was given, I think that was on the 28th of August. You'll be aware of that. And I just wondered what was done, what could be done so that that doesn't happen again when we go out to consult.
Well, we'll definitely take that away and look into it. Sorry, I wasn't,
So I did talk to a couple of people who were having issues, and so I reset some passwords for folks and sent some hard copies out to them. And then I didn't hear back, so we really try to do what we can to make sure that everyone has access in one way or another. To the one, it's critical for us. That's what drives us in overall is to have it.
And I think the same thing applies, that when we hear something like that as elected members, we must encourage people to make service requests so that we can, staff can contact the person, try to find, was it user error, was it our system error, was it a work, Dylan?
Oh, sorry, I wasn't going to interrupt you, but just to also note, and I dealt with a couple of these myself, direct feedback from Facebook comments that people were saying they were having trouble, so that would be straight to them. He would link with that person and help them resolve the issue. So we were proactive when those issues were raised and were our attention. Also, just note, I guess if there's a double up in there, or a couple of people once through the system and got 2 comments in there, statistically, that's not going to be significant to the numbers that you're looking at.
Just on the Let's Talk application, that is a wide application that's used by a number of councils around New Zealand. It's not proprietary to us. It's a pretty standard software package, but we'll follow up because it is pretty much, you could say 99% reliable. People follow the process to go, and it is. We've tried to simplify it as much as we can, but there's always going to be connectivity issue. If people have brownout in their own Wi-Fi and all that sort of stuff, that could be an issue that the link gets lost. But we'll follow up with the app because obviously Let's Talk is our major means to connect to the community to capture this information.
Yeah, it became, and I mean, a lot of people complained after the 1st of September, like once the submission fee closed, and then they complained. And I've heard a lot of people, and even our deputy chairs of the community board, his wife tried a dozen times, couldn't get up. So this happened a lot. People got really annoyed and frustrated.
Okay, that's noted and will absolutely be followed up on.
I do have some other questions.
Yes, please.
I just wondered, let's see. I mean, I agree with distritisation approach. Like, I do agree with that. However, I do have a couple of questions that I hope we can clarify for me. What happens if we sort of jump forward X number of years and I'm just going to refer to the endowment land at this stage, and use Cromwell's 52 hectares down here, is that example? And that's now been developed, and some of the proceeds are coming in. Is the proceeds from the sale of the endowment land, is that going to be kept separate so that as ring-fenced, or it will need to be, because we're talking about the industrial development? Yes, it's very specific, the purpose for which that development was given. So absolutely right, the Cheryl will need to in our accounts, because that is for a particular purpose, which there is further legal advice in our effort around sort of the boundaries with that must be used for that purpose of that endowment. And I understand it wasn't in the last criminal community board, but I understand there's some conversations around getting a strategic plan together for the investment of that land with the community board, starting those conversations. So that's going to be quite a critical piece of work that will need to be done, and that plan put together and brought to council as to what the board would like, their views on how they'd like to see that land use developed. So would there be any possibility then that, say there are some funds sitting there, that the district would, like we've done in the past, that the district would borrow, i.e. internal borrowing, as we have done?
Potentially that could be an option, because it would just be ring in our accounts, and a council though wish to, I know there was a project out in the Maniotoa rather than going for external borrowing. The decision around this table was, hey, it makes more sense to borrow against the land sales that have been earmarked for this endowment land. That's actually a mechanism. That's something we've been doing for a long time with internal.
And so with regard to that, then the district will be paying the interest on that loan,
Yes.
Would the Commonwealth ratepayer be also included in paying the interest on that loan? Bearing in mind that the money is actually there for the benefit of the Commonwealth account.
So if, it's a really good question. So if the activity for which we did the internal loan for was a district function, then the whole district would pay. So say it was a water treatment plant out in Maningatoto, which is already currently districtised, and we did internal borrowing, the cost of that does get spread across the district. However, where the Cromwell residents would benefit is that they will get the benefit of that internal interest going back into their land.
So they'll be paying the interest on the LGFO loan if we were the other parts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions, Tim?
Yeah.
No, hang on.
But no,
Okay.
sorry.
No, I thought.
No, I'll just go after. Sorry.
Oh, first, I apologise for that, page going off, Steve St John can't work out whether they're on a fire engine to help them or not. My apologies for that. The question I had is just going back to the page sorry, before talked about the demographics and the numbers of respondents. Yeah, I guess my question is, just because a whole lot of 60-year-olds from Cromwell gave a response, does that skew the data? Well, you know, read the data, because it doesn't also mean that there's every bit as many missing at the other end of the scale. And or is this better to, when I pick up the report, just read the comments? That's more relevant than the yes or no.
So I'm interested in terms of who was engaged in this consultation process. The qualitative comments that we've summarised for us, that this I think probably is more helpful. And I don't think we can make assumptions around what a certain demographic, a certain viewpoint would be, because we know, within a 60-year-old or 69-year-old, there's different views of people in that demographic. I think it's just really just showing that the types of people that got engaged, we really didn't hit the youth, and obviously the Cromwell area.
You don't with elections either, do we?
No.
Probably the demographics exactly the same. It's probably the same people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is this a follow-up, Lindley, or because Cheryl's next?
Oh, no, it's okay.
There's not, it wasn't only a comment, I just following up on JB's point. The demographic, the young people in here, they are, aren't they, just chasing up the cost of living and surviving. So, yeah, this.
Yeah, I think they were completely missing when times were good as well, though. So I don't know if that's the case. Cheryl.
Okay, so I've got this one more.
You're allowed as many as you want, Cheryl.
Sorry, it's actually just about, again, going back to the endowment land. And this is actually a question for you guys.
Okay.
And I go back to when we had that first paper of the delegations. And at the end of that meeting, Peter, you were overheard to say that it doesn't matter, the endowment can be changed. You contact the minister and change it. So please just.
No, that's
okay. So you said, so a couple of weeks later, when our next community board meeting, I said that to you and you said it's not as easy as that.
And it's not, I think there is precedent there where it has happened, but it's under like section 141 of the Local Government Act. There's a high bar.
However, when you said that, Tim, you were sitting on the other side of the table, when you said it's not as easy as you think, you said, Tim, yes it is, you just contact the minister and get the endowment changed. Now, unfortunately, I've not been able to let that go. And then at the Cromwell meeting, Alan Cole got up and said, Tim, you're a lawyer, I'm a lawyer. We both know that you can contact the minister and get the endowment changed.
Yeah.
And now you didn't address that question at the time, so I'm asking you now.
Yeah. So my comment, the comment that you made would have been a flippant one, which Nears shouldn't do. it is a complex process to go to the minister. So there's a couple of things here. Firstly, if you're going to go to the minister to unravel the endowment, to say this can, instead of being for the burghers and the mayor and the councillors of Cromwell, it will be for the district. To do that, we firstly have to consult and have a lot of community support. So our neighbours in QLDC have done this over some development land in Arrowtown, I think it was, for the Housing Trust. A big job. And my recall is that the minister was strongly swayed by the community being strongly behind it. So it is a complex thing. And my apologies if my flippance gave the wrong impression. The other thing to take into this as a follow-on is there were people at our submissions last night and the submissions that we've read saying this is just, you're going to do this, etc., etc. If that was our ambition, we'd be doing it. If the idea was to pinch the endowment land off Cromwell, as is being claimed, then why aren't we going to the minister? Why isn't this consultation about doing that rather than changing our internal processes? So I think there's been some, I'm not going to say scaremongering because I think that's too pejorative, but there has been some fears raised about this, that if this was, we're going to take that land off Cromwell and we're going to do things with it right across the district. That's the path we would have taken. That's the path I would have led as mayor. It hasn't been, because that isn't the way this is meant to progress.
So how do we actually, because I think you find in terms of the Cromwell resident, and I'm not sure if it's the whole wood, but certainly from town, that is a big issue. They are looking at that land. How do we as a council then mitigate those worries, those fears, and actually make it so that that does not or cannot happen?
I had a judge when I was a lawyer, Stephen Coyle, and he was very fond of saying in sentencing that the best determinant of future behaviour is past behaviour. So I'll come back. If that was the intent, if that was the ambition, if that's what we're thinking about, this conversation right now would be about whether we're going to go to the minister to change the endowment on the Cromwell land, and it isn't. So there's no way I can, firstly, we as a council can't bind what future councils do. All we can say is it's not a consideration in this mayor's mind or around this table. Because if it was, we'd be doing it. Because what we're doing and what we're considering doing maintains the sacrosanct of the endowment, which is to Cromwell.
But the reason you're asking the question is exactly what you're elected to do now.
Yeah.
And other councillors in the future have every right, as I will, and like anyone else, will say, this is what our intent is as councillors. We can make sure that if that's the values that you hold dearly to your community, that you are here at this table to make sure you bat out those community concerns.
We can't guarantee it, but we can assure that our intentions are that the endowment land is recognised as governed by, and we will accept the laws that govern it and where it should be used. There is no intention to do anything other. Now that's this table. And that's consistent. Another table with another mayor, but it's a debate for another time. That is a process, and it is complex.
And it's like Naseby's got a lot of endowment and or a bit of endowment, and community board has never ever even thought any differently other than that money or anything is generated by the endowment, and Naseby will be spent on purchase of Naseby. And that's a part of the being on a community board of council, historic understanding of your community and your role.
Okay. Nigel, then Tracy.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. What's confusing me is why we're talking on the subject of land delegations and endowment land when we've got an agenda item about districtisation. I just don't see.
They seem to follow like night and day. Because it's the concern that the community's raised that I think around this table we need to face and address.
Made up a lot of the submissions. A lot about, so it's got to be talked about, it's got to be addressed.
Tracy.
Yeah, just so in relation to process, would I be correct in thinking that in the event a council said they wanted to use endowment land outside of Cromwell, they would have to talk around the entire council table first to get agreement, and then go to consultation. And then, so there is, I mean, it would be everybody sitting around the table anyway.
We'd be doing this, but
we'd be doing this. So
exactly this.
Yeah, I mean, it is, what I'm just trying to say is that there must be several steps in that process. And yes. It wouldn't be just 200 odd submitters. I'm imagining there'd be 6,000 submitters saying it would be a bill search trying to sit in the gallery. So I think, yeah, I share, and that was, and I attended the Cromwell meeting, and it has come across very loud and clear. But I echo what you said, Martin, we're sitting around this table, that certainly isn't intent.
And keep in mind that those 6,000 submitters would be getting heard by the minister.
Yes.
Not just us.
They'd be direct.
Lindley, then Tona.
I just want to comment that the focus has been on land sales, but I think we were looking at any opportunity across the district to raise extra capital other than land. So any opportunities is what we're looking at. Not these.
I just wanted to highlight what Tracy has said with yours, with the precedent that's been set in the past for sales of endowment land has been when that community to which the endowment was granted has sought the sale of the land, not another community saying we'd quite like the look of that. And that was the example you gave being Arrowtown, seeking that for the wider benefit, as opposed to Maniototo saying we'd quite like to sell Cromwell's land or any other district coming in.
Any other questions? We've drifted away from the questions a little bit.
So
No, that's been all very, very good questions. No, sorry about that.
Just because we looked at the roles of community boards first, then got to this process, the fear that came through the initial process has raised around the land grab by this council of Cromwell assets, and that's putting it bluntly, is something which has coloured this debate from day one. No matter how many times you stay, endowment land stays where it is endowed, that message has not got through.
Okay.
And it's never been the intention of this council to seize assets from Cromwell to pay for things in Ranford or Maniotown. To say the benefits to some of the big infrastructural things which will happen in Cromwell is that their endowment land will pay, which is saving to the broader district because of those assets which are districtised, i.e. free waters. And it has coloured the debate completely. And you can see that by the submissions. And I've been around this table long enough to know when I can see something which in the submissions process which is fairly well orchestrated. And yes, it's an consultative process, it's not a referendum.
All right, I think it's a good opportunity now to just go around the table and hear what each individual councillor's thoughts are, and then we'll come back to a bit more of a Corredo. Just helps me in guiding the direction that we may head. I'm going to start with my deputy mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, it's been said this is probably the biggest decision that this council's faced, probably since it first came into being. There's been some pretty big ones, and this is pretty significant. And unfortunately, I think it's been a little bit hijacked by the interpretation of some of the information that's out there in the community. The myth about the Cromwell Borough Council getting a whole lot of land from the Clyde Power Project without the Toothar Valley development, which just didn't happen. It was party to a committee that was to look at how the Crown disposed of land in Cromwell taken under the Public Works Act. It didn't say that the Cromwell Borough Council got it because it didn't get it. So those sort of red herrings have really, I think, unfortunately, caused a lot of people to have some angst about this land grab side of things, that it simply has no foundation. And that's really unfortunate. And despite conversations where I've certainly been involved in and explained that to some people, they still think that's what happened when it didn't. And if it did, it was on a piece of land that the borough wanted. So I think, unfortunately, it's really skewed the comments that have been made, and people have been captured by an issue that's actually not relevant. But you see a whole lot of people respond to it all. And then you take that to the next level in terms of the endowment land. And despite all the efforts that have been made to explain how the endowment works and what the purpose of it is and where it would go, still some issues to be resolved in my mind about the Cromwell Borough, and what it is, what it was, what it could be, and what it should be. I've got some clear views. Still think that we should be looking closely at what it was when we got amalgamated, because I think that when I looked at 1890 something, the Cromwell Borough, it said, didn't say today. So the Cromwell Borough as it last was, but at the end doesn't matter. The purpose of the endowment is the most important thing anyway, and it's in the aim of borough funds for Cromwell. Be it the small borough, bigger borough, but it's not for the aid of borough funds for Nathan. And unless someone changes that endowment, so again, you've got the situation where I think the community have latched onto something that's going to, I think, have a huge impact. And that's not being talked about or even suggested, but it's become the focus. And I think that's given a real disservice to what is the intention here of council saying, let's look at the bigger picture. To the extent that I've even seen people start to question what the role of a councillor is on a community board. And people trying to tell me how I should be doing the job that I've been elected to do. And I think that has confused things as well. We sit here as councillors, make a decision for the good of the district. And we involve our community boards significantly in doing that, and the intention is to do that going forward. But we're left in a situation where we haven't said to the people how we're going to do that yet. And one thing that did come up in a couple of comments that I read was saying, you know, the two things about digitalisation and the delegation should have gone hand in hand. Hindsight's wonderful. I couldn't agree more. It just makes a complex issue though a whole lot more complex, but maybe that was the way to do it. I have confidence, however, whatever decision is made today, if it is to go down the path of digitalisation, that that the delegations that will fall out of that will, by this council, be made sure to be making sure that the community does have a clear role. The irony of all this doesn't escape, because most of the things have come out of Cromwell. Whereas this all started in Cromwell, unfortunately, because the previous community board didn't make a decision to accept the tender to refurbish a hall. Now, it can't relitigate it, won't relitigate it, but that's where it started. So we went from spending just under, I think it was 5.4 or 5.7 million dollars to refurbish a hall, to now going to what, is it 47? 45, whatever it is, 45 million. And that's what's going to trip up the council in terms of the debt cap. That's what's driving this ultimately, is the decision that the board rightly made to go down a path to where it is. This council endorsed that decision. Maybe not with the rigour that they've had in the past. Sorry, maybe with the rigour that they've normally had in the past. Maybe not the rigour they should have in the future. So we've got to where we are today, and yet most of the concerns are coming out of Cromwell because of it, when Cromwell actually probably pushed this council to this point. Now, how that ultimately pans out in terms of the debt cap and all those things is a moving field. It's not probably going to be what it is today. But we have to make a decision today based on what we do know. I still come back and look and go, ultimately it comes back, if I take the example, which I haven't got on my screen in front of me, so I'm just going to do that, where we come back and say, what is the benefit to the respective wards? And there are definitely winners and losers. And I think what I'm picking up, as supposed to summarise it, is the people in Cromwell saying $52 a year for us, we're not in this game. That's what the people have submitted and said. But equally, you have to, I think we get charged with the decision making, saying, but actually, is that $52 that material either way? Because if it is a saving, then it's at worst cost neutral to the biggest ward with the ward that's made the most noise, for want of a better word. So I'm looking forward to hearing the other views that will ultimately tell me which way I'm going, because I'm still sitting here now going, I can go either way, and neither decision will be wrong in my view. But I'm really looking forward to hear what other people got to say. That'll just maybe find that balance that'll tip me to where we go. But it's yeah, a lot more work will follow this, no matter what, whether we do it or not. There's more to come. That'll be in the meantime.
Stu.
On a lighter note, I will bring to the table. It's interesting. I've been thinking a lot about this, and when you stack it, sat out in the rural parts who have definitely had advantages from digitalisation of water and roads. You look at other avenues, but an interesting fact, I have to thank my mother for it, is my great-great-grandfather in 1867 built the ferry from Bannockburn to Cromwell. He's also in 1866 built the Bannockburn Hotel, and he put together the first board of trustees in the now Cromwell School, I think Cromwell Bannockburn. So I would say that I have a family, or my whakapapa to the Hawara River and to the Tairi, which are two extreme ends of this wonderful council. But why they did that was so people could trade with each other. People could cross boundaries, and now we look at the growth in Bannockburn, you look at the growth in Cromwell. So those people have come from wherever they have to make a great future for us. And living on the other side, and I mean, you travel through our wonderful region to go to all your regions. So Cromwell, in its way, is very vulnerable to the rest of the community for trading, like the old days and rivers and passes to its roots. So those people look to the future, and I guess that's where we're at now, looking at the future. But my whole community life, or council or community board, I have always said that we should be distributising all assets in council. And I wrote down 3 names. Nigel, Tim and Neil have said it'll never happen. Because of, I'm saying we should be distributising land, we should be distributising over time. And I'm saying, why not? There's a question, and for lots of reasons, and now become a very complex part of it. I can understand the friction that people have thinking they're going to lose. And I can understand distrust in councils. Because one minute we're going down a path of water here or a path of road and the rules change and the laws change. We are only dealing with the facts we deal with at the time. But we have to have balance and we have to have unity for everyone to function. Growth is hard, but it is necessary. When we go to where we've come from, to where we see in the future, there wasn't a Cromwell a long time ago. It was a rabbit-infested little place. There were gold miners parked around here and all this river, this whole district. It was because someone had a dream to come from the home countries to come here via Australia to live and let's set the destiny up, and that's where we're at. This table, this council table here is very, very balanced. As the ones have been in the past. Cromwell's become a great place because of the elected members in the past. We mustn't forget the work that the Murray McMillans and their teams did, and Neil's been there all the time. It's had to deal with growth all the time, so I can understand the thing. But they have made great decisions, and we will continue. And it's like Cheryl's issues have got. This table will make great decisions for the future, whatever the future is, because they're passionate, they care, they respect the past, they respect the ownership. So, and in that, because of my stance, I would definitely be because supporting the option of distributisation at option 2, because I think it's vital that we do care for our other neighbours. And I just see it's the only option that I see we've got to continue the great work we've done. So that's where I'm at. Thanks, Jen. Preston.
First of all, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who submitted. Thank you to all the people who turned up to the public meetings, and thank you to Tim for actually attending so many and leading all of that. But I also want to say thank you in half to some of the people to a lot of people that have spoken to all of the councillors down here and may not have put in a submission. While submissions are one part of what we need to look at, we're here, and one submitted last night was very clear that we are here to, and it was a good reminder that we're here to represent our district. We all have our own patches, but when we sit at this table, we're here for a district view. So I've had a lot of people contact me and say they're in the 50-50 camp, and I ask them why, and they say, well, emotionally that it's one way, logically in business sense, it is the other 50. So for me, what I've done is I have thought, what's important now, what's important going forward, and what kind of, situation do I want my grandchildren to grow up with in Central Otago? And I don't want my grandchildren to grow up thinking that there's difference between where you live. This is one district. I've put a business lens over the top rather than an emotional one. And for that reason, and for what we've heard, and I really say thank you to the community board chairs that have turned up today. That was amazing to hear from them. Very well spoken. So for me, it would be option 2.
Thanks, Tracy. Finley.
So previously, when I've been on community boards, I know that we fought tooth and nail, and I know that I did anyway. We didn't always see what actions might have moved across the district that helped us get projects away, but with a picture. This term, I wasn't appointed back to the community board, and that's actually been a valuable lesson for me because I've been looking at through the lens just of a district councillor. I've realised strongly that I'm signing off on council financials, taking responsibility for them, having little control over any input into what the community boards are deciding and doing. Times are changing, we've got huge costs coming at us, and we have to work together as a district to gain the best economies for all our ratepayers across the district. We can't operate as we have in the past. It's a new world out there. I fully support option 2. Supplying Teviot assisting with because of the pool, but if it does come back to council, that would change. So I'm fully supportive of option 2.
Thanks, Emily. Ian.
Question that I've been wondering is, would restricting the monies that can be spent in a ward to those that can be raised in a ward be more likely to lead to sustainable long-term decisions regarding the provision of these assets and services?
And what's the answer you came to with that question in yourself?
My answer would be yes, and that's why I would go for status quo.
Thank you. Sarah?
When it first came to the table, we were sold this on the premise of it being much easier for the rating aspect, much easier for the finances, much easier for lots of reasons. And that's fallen by the wayside recently and realised that actually that's not very relevant. And ever since that conversation between the point about ring fencing, the money that comes from an endowment still got to be ring fenced. I don't see that much change in the scheme of the workload and the money in pockets and the allocation, all of that. I don't know if the districtisation of function and all of that money actually add up quite like they did at the start. And I'm struggling with that argument that we brought it to the table for being the reason we're doing it now. And because of all of that white noise, it's made it really difficult to concentrate on what's important. I think I agree with Cheryl that districtising those functions is on balance a good idea for the most part. But I'm worried that there's still too much stuff that's not certain or locked down or any better for doing it.
What sort of stuff?
Yeah, I agree that districtising pools, yes, on balance, it is easier over the top. But are we then making it harder, putting money back in pots and ring fencing for endowments here and things that Cromwell can do for Cromwell, but really it's for the benefit of the district because Cromwell's taking care of its own with its own money. But is that just a backhanded way of using their money to do that? That's what we're hearing. I find it hard to see. This is the first time I've sat here and truly struggled to not be a Cromwell board person and put that district level because the amount of noise that comes out here and the amount of context there is in that, and I'm really struggling with that. To remove myself to that level because I can see the benefit. I just don't know if we've done it right enough to do it now.
Martin?
I've used this analogy before, but when I first arrived in 30 odd years ago, Alexander is the centre of the universe, climbing is a revolving moon, and Cromwell may have been in another hemisphere. And it struck me as being very odd because I quite like parochialism when it comes to sports fields, but not when it comes to politics. I support option 2. I think the struggle we're going to have is because of this debate has come out of the original conversation around delegations to community boards. There's work which still needs to be done on strategies like around the museums, for instance, which is going to be directly affected by this vote. And I'm concerned that there, in some camps, may be some predetermination around some of the things which will happen out of digitisation, but that's a debate for another time. I believe this table has always had a view with the district as a whole. The challenge we're going to face as elected members is how we still maintain a staunch community boards and have inputs from them. Because I have seen community boards in other regions which are just voiceless. They get given a tiny pot of money and they are treated in some cases by their councils, and we have neighbours here you can cite with some disdain. We have never done it. That's something we're rightly quite proud of. This vote is critical for the future. The voices I'm hearing, I haven't changed my mind. I know where I'm going. I just think that either way, the decision made today, we've got some work to do. And we're certainly going to have other opportunities to listen to ourselves, listen to ourselves on the table and to our communities. But I'm not being distracted by the issues around land grabs and things like that, because I'm comfortable with the fact that is not that.
Thank you, madam. Cheryl.
Obviously, there's some concerns, so everybody's aware of those. I do agree with Lindley though. I mean, this is a new, we are moving in some times, and that's certainly true. It is a new world. I'm concerned about the delegations from the community board point of view, that they have done a relatively good job over the years, and I'm concerned that they will lose their voice. I'm concerned that they will lose their purpose. And even though I've heard assurances that the endowment would be respected, that is this council only, it is not future councils. And I had no doubt in my mind that future councils, when put under pressure, will could very possibly try to get the endowments changed, and then any money that would go will be assigned to the common town could very well possibly be being used for the district. On one hand, districtisation, and I'm really struggling because I understand that districtisation makes sense. But on the other hand, I'm looking at the uncertainty, and I'm just sitting here very uncertain and worried about the risks for the future with a different council, a different mayor, or whoever. And I want somebody to actually tell me what to do.
I've got a question that may assist. If we vote for the status quo today, or if we vote for option 1 or option 2, does that change any of the risk of what a future council may do in terms of the endowment name? Because I don't think it does. If we maintain the status quo, a future council can go to the minister. If we change the status quo, a future council can go to the minister. It's exactly the same risk.
I know, and that's the whole point. It's not, but that is the issue that I'm struggling with.
Just stay on council.
My grandfather probably had the same issue. What does it look like in 160 years? Here we are debating exactly the same points they made. Let's stay, look at that. There.
Thanks, Tim. First, I'll say to Stu, I never say never. So, so on this issue, I'm torn. In theory, I support districtisation, providing there are protections around protecting community board powers and their role. In theory, I believe in changing delegated powers over land, providing there are clear and explicit protections around endowment land. But we haven't entirely handled things as well as we might in presenting these issues to our community boards and to our community. The changing of delegated control over land policy was presented in February to our community boards. It was done, I think, in haste, and with the lack of, certainly with the lack of basic information. How much land is there? What is its status? What rules cover handling endowment land and so on? That item was left on the table to be revisited this November. So before that, we have today the agenda item on districtisation. This should be reasonably simple. We are looking at the option of rating certain activities district-wide and not by ward. The benefits are efficiency and a more strategic policy view. The risk is taking power away from community boards and losing the local voice. Yet the majority of submissions focus on something else, land delegation policy, which is not even mentioned in the agenda item. Even the background paper to this agenda item assumes that this is what it is about, talking of debt limits and borrowing power, irrelevant, you would think, to the proposal, to the agenda item. Unless maybe the word property means land as well as buildings, and I don't think it does. Maybe we need to define the word property. One side of me says we have insufficient information to progress this proposal. There is complete confusion and lack of trust, certainly in the Cromwell ward, about what is being said and what this agenda item means. Districtisation has been conflated with land policy. So I would hope that it may not be something that's possible or eligible. In an ideal world, we should, I think, be putting this item on the table to be dealt with before Christmas, but after we've looked at the land delegation policy, so that we duly look at our land delegations policy in November. And after we've dealt with that, I think the issue of districtisation, as per this agenda paper, would be reasonably simple proposition. If we do something today on districtisation, I would like to see some kind of proviso that notes that land delegations remain in place and that to be reviewed at a future date. In other words, trying to make clear that we're talking about two separate issues and that voting for districtisation is not voting for land grabs or whatever other things are being suggested. So like Neil, I'm sitting there listening to the views of others, hoping to be convinced. In theory, to reiterate, in theory, supporting digitisation, supporting with provisos, supporting a change in land delegations with provisos. But I would just like to see this agenda item made slightly more explicit in terms of the separation of those two issues.
Thank you. Sally.
Right. Well, I'd like to just start with, I really liked the comment before from Jaden about embracing change now than waiting to be forced into it. And I just wanted to make a couple of observations. And I think one thing I think that everyone is afraid of is change. And I think we saw that with Three Waters. I think with Three Waters, we're really worried as a community that we're going to have our assets taken off us. And so we really resisted that change, and I don't think that we're necessarily any better off for it. You know, we're in a muddle now. We still possibly have to set up CCOs, and just because we said no, it hasn't made it an easier path for us. On another note, in resisting change, I watched something on Hui this week that me Tim was involved in with Francie and Louise, and you know, I looked at how Francie and Louise had to battle for years in our district to get Te Reo spoken, and I think that's just another example of how we really like to resist changing situations. And one of the comments at the end of that ceremony was from someone, obviously, that was at the ceremony that became a citizen, and she said that's going to be a memory that's going to be held with her forever because of that experience that she had with the Te Reo. And I think that's a really great example of, you know, sometimes we've got to get out of our way and not be so afraid about what's coming around the corner. And yeah, I share those comments because I think that everyone gets really afraid, and I do think it's unfortunate that people in the Cromwell district think that we're in for a land grab when, you know, I think clearly that land is their land, and I know that around this table that is not our priority. What we're wanting is to try and build a better district and a better future for all people that live in Central Otago. Yeah, just lastly, we are one district and we need to come to together to achieve the best outcome that we can for our whole district. And I know there's some really big decisions that are going to be made in Cromwell in future years, and I think that it would be great if all of us were together on the same page to help Cromwell realise their aspirations, as well as some of the smaller communities. And I definitely support option 2.
Thank you, Sally. Tamer.
Thank you. With the benefit of having heard everybody else around the table, which is always helpful, I reiterate what Councillor Patterson said about thank you to the people who did submit, both in person and online, and at petrol pump and at the Wedderburn pub. I think I appreciate the community board chairs and deputy chair coming in this morning. Cromwell's highlighted challenges with growth. Teviot Valley have highlighted challenges with lack of growth. Vincent has challenges with growth in particular demographics and not in others. And the Maniatoto is facing some of the most difficult economic conditions on farm in a generation. I'm pleased that Ms Harrison highlighted that Cromwell can achieve maximum benefit from investing in large-scale infrastructure to help manage that growth. That's going to be really important going forward. And on Monday, I sat at the assessment committee and had the wonderful job of giving away money, and especially when it's money that didn't come from our ratepayers, it came from Otago Community Trust and from Sport New Zealand. And that money helps fund kids go from Ranfurly to Cromwell to play hockey, from Cromwell to Alexandra to play netball, from Alexandra to Roxburgh to play basketball. I think it just really highlighted for me that we are one district and our borders are not hard borders. There's no wall, there's no passport required, and we share around our district in many ways, not just financial ones. I've heard that our community wants to retain local voice and transparency, and this council, as Deputy Chair Jaden Crom highlighted, champion localism more than many other councils around New Zealand. We will discuss delegations and what working together looks like in a few months. And for those next steps, I'll be taking forward the sentiment that I've heard a few times at local government things recently and in other forums, nothing about us without us. On that basis, I believe that the best option for all of Central Otago is to support option 2. That we districtise all of council spending, but acknowledge that the current operating model for the Roxburgh pool should allow for an exception at this time. And I look forward to allaying fears raised around our continuing of local voice by ensuring it is not only retained, but strengthened at our community board and council conversation level.
Thank you, Tony. Okay, from my perspective, I tautoko everything. Agree with everything that previous speakers have said. Thanking staff, thanking the community board chairs and deputy chair. It's been a very, very long road, but hard conversations always are. Huh? I think Neil, you're 100% right that the land is a red herring, and Nigel, you've picked up on that too. But it's been intriguing that when we went to talk about the delegations, it suddenly became about the land. Didn't have a damn thing to do with the delegation. And when we went to talk about districtisation, it suddenly became about land. Didn't have really that much to do with the land. It's because of the fears of Cromwell. Sorry, the fears of some people in Cromwell that this is a land grab or something like that. The process has been derailed, and I think that was inevitable, no matter what we did. But that was going to become the focus for a number of people. So be it. I'm not sure though that we got it wrong going the way we did, because sometimes the end result comes out. If I had my time again, I probably wouldn't have done our delegation first. But as I sit around the table today and listen to Anna in particular, Graham and Jaden, and we've gone through a lot of work that will come to the forefront in November, a lot of thinking about how we empower the boards in a different way, because we've really underutilised our boards up till now. They've had their lane, we've had ours, and I reflect as a mayor, I wish I'd done something about that. We've already bought in as a result of the start of these conversations, the board chairs coming and talk to us. Why haven't we been doing that forever? Every decision that the boards are it's their board that it's based on, even if it's a council decision, will be there. Why haven't we done that before? And it's because we've got in our lanes and we changed that a little bit. This is changing it quite a bit more if it goes ahead, but it's, I think, the right change. And I'm adamant that the boards must be empowered. And that's one of the fears that we've got. We've all got, the community's got, I've got, is how do we make sure that the boards remain relevant? How do we keep them as the voices in our communities? We do that in November with the delegation discussions in close harmony with these great leaders that have come and talked to us and the people that are on their boards. How can we make this so that it's so much better? And I'm really excited about that, because I think we can come out with a model that's actually a vast improvement. It's a Ferrari on the Ford we've been driving. That's a really exciting thing, and it takes away that fear, because that sits in our hands alongside the boards of how we best do that. But then from there, it sits in the community's hands. If the community goes, oh, screw it, boards are wasting bloody time, I'm grumpy with this decision or whatever, they'll get what they get. We can't do anything about that, but for urge the communities to do the honour and the service that the past community boards and the potential of the future community boards brings them. And I come back to what I said to Anna, that Cromwell had to have a by-election is a disgrace. And it shows to me, and it showed to me then, that this system's broken. So what do we do about it? Because you can have a system where there had to be a by-election, where you could get a system that throws up entirely the wrong people because the right people don't give a damn. And that's where we are now. So what is it that we're running the risk of losing? I just take my last comment back. When I say that's where we are now, I'm not inferring that any boards have had the wrong people brought up, but the system we have isn't working. So I think the land is a fallacy. I've already pointed out that the endowment land is protected at law. It's very simple, and that has been an entire red herring. So Cromwell submissions that we've heard have been a lot based on a fallacy, unfortunately. And when you look at it, more people in Vincent and Maniatoto favoured distributisation in some form than not. Tibet was pretty close. So if you look at our four boards, there's some different views. But as we said, this is a very, very hard decision. The decision that was made in 2010 on water meters, people were against them by and large, although Neil tells me today the people in Cromwell weren't, because they'd already done it and realised the benefits. But I was on the Vincent Community Board at that time, and my life was hell. People were very angry about it. Me and Malcolm McPherson got third in the next election. It was a hard decision, but I don't think there's anyone around this table, and very few in the community, wouldn't say now that it was the right decision. And take it to 2016. A lot of people were against the Three Waters distributisation very vociferously, and kind of for similar bunkered thinking that we have now. And how screwed would we be if Mayor Lepper hadn't have led that conversation in a way that got us to where we are now? Aotearoa would be screwed. Well, Mako would be screwed. There's the potential we're all screwed in the Three Waters space anyway. Let's not say let's not keep that out of our way. So look, when it comes down to this, I look at this and go, our structure, our governance structure is so out of whack with the rest of the country, and I think there's a reason for that, but we need to create a structure as we progress. If this progresses, that keeps our boards very strong. We are 10,000 square kilometres. We must have those voices around the table. And as I keep reiterating, if we don't have strong boards, or worst case scenario, the boards disappear due to apathy by the public, we will have people say, I speak for Cromwell, I speak for Alexandra, they'll be unelected, we could probably name them, and they'll be wrong. They'll be who we hear from.
Can I just clarify, are you suggesting that when we come to addressing an agenda item on lands delegation policy, that we'll be talking about strengthening the powers and communication between community boards and the council?
When we talk about delegation, absolutely we will.
That will fold over into what we're talking about today.
I think it would, if we move towards district,isation, it will reflect what we're talking about today. And as I just mentioned to Anna, maybe the way is to have a committee, particularly for Cromwell, that has the endowment land, to look at what happens with that, because we know that money is going to be needed, not just for the hall, but for the town centre. So that would be how I would see that progressing. I'd have to say I'm not in favour of delaying as your.
I'm not in favour of either, but I'm trying to find, and it maybe it's just a matter of taking on good faith that after what we've heard today, that it's front and centre of our thinking, that relationship between community boards and
absolutely. It would absolutely have to be.
This, I've got to add something to it. When I was talking to, I am, if I vote for districtisation, I would not be in favour of voting for option 2 for making exception of TV. I think, in my view, that is quite wrong. It goes against the whole rationale and raison d'etre of why you districtise.
Okay. So how do we progress things now? I've taken some quick numbers as we've gone around, and by my reading, we've got quite a few in favour of option 2. The majority are in favour of option 2. We've got 3 sort of undecided and 1 pretty sure on the status quo. But I think as we've had our Pauletta around the table, and Nigel's just raised this, we've sort of talked about by and large the reasons for or against districtisation, and then landed on one or t'other. And I think perhaps our better way may be now to have a consideration. We're not saying that option 3 of status quo is off the table, but Ian's the only one that I'm hearing leaning towards that. So let's have a wee chat about option 1 or option 2, because Nigel's put his case, and I think I'd like to put mine now.
Option 2 is a prime example of us thinking about all of our communities and working our best we can to make things work. All of us, and option 2 is assisting here as a prime example of how we can work together for the betterment of all of our community.
We'll also be said that it's listening clearly to the views of our boards, which is what we want to do moving forward. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start this time. I'm going to go the other way. Because I think if we're having a discussion about 1 and 2, I think we need to flesh it out a bit. The thinking of those who have said 2 have mostly said it without saying the why. And for me, as I've gone around the communities and I look at it and go, well, when I was in some places, when I was in the Maniototo and I talked about the Teviot situation, they were very clear. I felt at the public meeting that, no, that's not fair. That's not right. And we said to them, and I did at other meetings, but hang on a minute, the Teviot's done very well out of Three Waters, done very well out of Roden. Still doesn't make sense to a lot of people that we would be making a community that scrimped and scraped to build its own beautiful swimming pool, to then have to fund that and subsidise 3 others at a fairness level. That doesn't make sense. But on the other hand, a lot of money up on Three Waters and on Roden. But that's not what's influenced my thinking towards option 2 the most. Benji Patterson has in his economic report that we got 2 months ago. The Tibet Valley has the lowest GDP at negative 2.1. This is between 2018 and 2023. The lowest GDP at minus 2.1. The lowest jobs growth at minus 2.9. And the Tibet Valley is the only place in Central Otago that has less than the New Zealand average for population growth. Now that sounds bad, but when you think we are the 5th fastest growing district out of 67 in the country, that one of our wards is actually worse than the New Zealand average. I don't know how to put it delicately, Norm, but the Tibet's in a bit of trouble. And I think if we were to impose another $200 odd on their rates, we would be kicking somebody in their teeth when they're already a bit down. And as mayor of the whole district, I concede the argument for unfairness, but I think that the pools are a massive drain of resource, and that's shown by the difference that it will make to the Tibet if we proceed with an option 1. And I just can't countenance for the future of the Tibet and all of us from there putting such an economic burden upon them. So that's where I sit. Tamer.
Like you, my decision is also made on the report from Benji Patterson, and I thought about that this conversation around option 1 and option 2 is about what is fair, what is equality, and what is equity. And I think the fact that one of our wards is being left behind when we are one of the fastest growing districts in New Zealand is perhaps not fair, and that option 1 is equity. Option 1 is equality, and that makes the most business sense. But when I look at what is happening to the Tibet Valley and what they've done to generate that pool and the work that has gone into it over the last 12 to 15 years, I think that for the foreseeable future, the right thing to do is to go for option 2.
Thank you. Sally, do we even need to hear from you? Please, Sally.
So a couple of things. If we didn't go for option 2, then I think as a ward, we'd be probably quite keen to give our pool back, because if we were going to go for option 1 and pay another $200 and something in rates and get nothing for it, then I don't think we would be that keen to keep running our swimming pool, because it takes a lot of volunteer effort to keep the costs down and to run that pool. And so I think that's something that would have to be taken into consideration. And the second thing is we don't have assets that other parts of our community have. I mean, if we take the Cromwell Hall, for example, they actually haven't sold the land that they need to pay for that. And so as a council and as a district, we're giving them a leg up to get that project done. We never got a leg up in the Tibet when we went to build our swimming pool. We had to find that money ourselves. And we worked really, really hard as a community to get what we can, but also not to try and disadvantage our community by raising our rates. So because we realise that not everyone in our district can afford a huge rate rise. So those would be the reasons that I've been keen for option 2.
Thank you. Nigel, an opportunity to defend your opinion. Should you wish to.
Yes, I'd really like to correct Sally. I mean, the Cromwell Ward has already sold some $23–24 million worth of land so far.
Yeah, but you haven't
to pay for that. You said that we didn't sold any land. And I don't want to address the differences between option 1 and 2. I stand by what I said earlier. If we went with digitalisation, I'm just wondering whether it's option 1 or 2, and whether you put some kind of codicil that says noted that land delegation policy is to be addressed in the future, because there's been just so much confusion, and maybe I'm skewed by living in the Cromwell Ward, and the contribution doesn't exist elsewhere. But even if it was just made explicit that land policy is going to be considered on its merits at a future date, that at least acknowledges that what we're talking about today is not land.
Can I ask a question, Nigel? Is the confusion about the land in the community or around this table? Is that what you're worried about? Because
I don't think it's around this table.
right, so if the confusion isn't around this table, then I think are we surely not free to progress one way or the other,
Yeah.
and then try to deal with the confusion afterwards? Because I suspect we're never going to. I've worked so hard to try to clarify it, and it isn't working.
Yeah,
The board.
for the sake of it, that's, I wouldn't die the death, but and as I say, maybe living in that ward, it has skewed the importance of that issue in the way, and it's going to be dealt with within a couple of months. So.
Thank you. Sharon.
Well, to be perfectly honest, I kind of feel like I support option 3. 75% of our submission did actually take option 3 as their choice. Admittedly, the majority were from it, but then if nobody else bothered to have their say, we've got to accept that they thought that everything else was fine, as it was, as it is now. However, if you're looking between option 1 and 2, and if that's, then in a way, I'm torn between the two. I agree with Nigel in that if you're going to do justification, then do it. And then that would mean that Paul and Roxburgh would actually be looked after by council and run by council, etc. However, I do appreciate that Roxburgh did the fundraising, well, not just Roxburgh, but the Tibiet Valley did the fundraising for it, and I appreciate that. But they have actually had a huge amount of district money in terms of road and water. So again, I just go back to falling back into option 3 again. Leave it alone.
Just to clarify on the full matter, if we did go with option 1, it would then be for the Teviot community, Sally said, to decide whether to hand the pool over or not. We can't take it.
No.
But I would say that if we were to have a vote in the Teviot Valley on that, it would be massively against it. And having gone with Peter to the pool committee, they've just built the pool. The last thing they want to do is at this stage hand it over. So I just wanted to clarify that in case it's back up. Marty.
I think the inevitability of the Teviot pool coming under council control in some future date is not to be dismissed. But the current option 2 appeals to me, and just to comment on the survey results, well, there was a consultation process, not a binding referendum. And I'm quite happy to continue my support of what I can do.
In terms of 1 or 2, I know you were leaning towards Sarah. I've got a question mark. I can't remember what you were leaning towards, but if it was a 1 or a 2 situation, what's your thinking on that?
Paul is a very topical, current, emotive area that, because it's so new and so much work, and Sally herself is sat here, it makes it a lot more present in that discussion to be considered, whereas have this decision been made at a different time and something different, replace the pool, then it would be a different ward that we've been not necessarily favouring, but looking to offset the hardship. I fully agree that offsetting any extra hardship is the way to go for that community. But I'm struggling with the fact that right now it's that pool. But what if we did this 12 months ago or 2 years later, the pool would be different, would it? We're making a decision that has a significant offset back to there. And I don't know if we got that right now, looking back, that having those options 1 and 2, if that's the road going down, if that's the right thing to have done.
Ian, you were option 3, but, and respecting that, but popping it to one side. Is there any thoughts you have on the difference between option 1 and option 2 that you want to share?
We will take the view that deviates already benefited from the other aspects of districtalisation. And due to that, I wasn't voting for option 3, I would go for option 1.
Thank you. Well, you've already expressed, but express further if you wish.
I think we can achieve so much more together than we can in isolation. As per the example of option 2, we're working together to ensure our communities are all taken care of. So, each of the parochials and we think of Otago, we've all looked after each other and it's around.
Tracy?
I guess everyone's kind of said it, I still support option 2. So I think.
Stu?
Yeah, the pool shouldn't be becoming a big issue of a district-wide digitalisation debate, which is massive. First thing I'm going to clarify is there an app of digitalisation? I think yes, there is. And I think it's pretty clear that option 2 is the only option we have, and we are in a community, we are making decisions not lightly, and I'm not changing my mind, but I think we've got to make sure we do digitalisation of status quo, and that decision made by the will of tables being made. But of course,
Okay. Yeah, we haven't heard your specific thoughts on the 1 versus 2 discussion. What really is that?
No, not true. I think the key thing here is this is not about parochialism. In fact, this is parochialism working back the other way and switched on the sports field. I think it's ironic, since twice today, that the Tibet Valley, for all its economic woes, can raise the funds and build a swimming pool. And that shows the strength of the community and how it can get off its backside and make stuff happen. But I think in Central Otago, every community is doing that in some way, shape or form. So I think that says a lot to that community, that maybe the economic side of things is not necessarily the doom and gloom, because it really gets off its backside and makes stuff up, gets done, and has done for many years. It's a really good example. Yeah, Cromwell, yes, has borrowed some money. At the end of the day, there's something to secure that against, and the council name is used to do that. So I think that'll take care of itself in good time. And I still look back and go, at the end of the day, this table, we could have said no. We had the power. We didn't do it. We could have. I'm going to say we should. I thought about the issue about pools and the equality and the equity side of things, which is what options 1 and 2 are about. And I remember many years ago when we said that the people living up in this valley should be paying for the swimming pool, because they weren't. We said, but they can use it, so they can, so they are. And I thought, well, each one of those have probably got a pool of their own as well. So I looked at back to Roxburgh and go, is that a fair connection to make? But when you're looking at equity, it's probably not. Those ones up the limit are always going to have a pool. I'm not saying they've all got one because I really don't know, but I suspect they might have. I think the only sensible outcome for us, and as long as we make sure in the resolution we pass today that we send a very clear message about what the delegation should be, is option 2. The numbers and the dollars don't convey, don't swing it far enough one way or the other to make actually a bit of difference. But if we don't get the delegations right, then you will lose this community completely, the wider community. You will get factions, you will get, as you've talked about, the unelected people to become the spokespeople, and then you might get some of the elected people at this table that could be the same people. And you just look at it on balance, and I end up in that position saying that option 2 is the right thing to do for the right reasons, but get the delegations right. So I'm going to say that when we come to the recommendations, we need to put some words around that to make sure that it's quite clear what we expect, and that might take some time to think about it unless you've already got them ready. And if you haven't, why not?
I would have thought that would be a discussion for delegations in November, but
it's the writer of that.
As the writer of this paper, Wayne, what do you have?
That delegation.
Yes.
Back in the day. What I was going to say was that, you know, when it comes to that future meeting, if we've got it wrong, you can tell us to go away and do it again.
Well, that's true.
So there's no fear.
Yeah, that's entirely valid. When it comes to the delegations meeting, if we're not happy with the delegations, you say staff, go and write them again, or here's what you need.
Yeah, but for the same reason you said before about whatever we do in the delegations, we make sure that council just don't say no for no good reason. I think we should provide that direction today, so Wayne don't get it wrong.
Okay.
Sorry, that's and I think that's also sending a clear signal to the community that we've actually heard what they said and they think we can fix it. Well, not fix it, we can make sure it's.
What if we were to have something along the lines of, I'm not sure what C will be yet, but that prior to the November meeting, staff to workshop the delegations with the council and community boards. I don't know, I'm expecting that's
probably a good enough starting point because you're going to get everyone in the room.
I felt it was what was going to happen anyway.
Yeah.
So, okay, so just from my perspective, because we are going to have to come to a crunch here. The land thing, I'm not attracted, Nigel, sorry, to not dealing with it today because there's confusion in Cromwell. I've been subject to a great deal of it. I could say that this leads to a potentially.
Right, what Neil said. What Neil has just said. Allays some of my concerns.
Allays, okay. Okay, all right, well, I think I need to progress this. Wayne has, in his usual inimitable manner, drawn up a number of options depending on the direction that we've got. I'm sensing that the majority is heading towards option 2, so I'm going to put.
Yes, that's good. Would it be possible to look at A and B first? And then whatever happens with C.
Unless we can do that, Wayne, no problem. So I'll just take us to that. And my computer's decided to be naughty, which is incredibly helpful. Okay, so I will move recommendation A and B, receives the report, accepts the level of significant notes and considers the submissions to be made on the distributisation proposal. And with all big things, I'm going to ask my deputy if he wishes to second that.
Absolutely, Your Honour.
Thank you, Your Honour. They made me a mere not a jacket, and that's probably good for everybody.
I just wanted to be nice and slip.
Okay, so that's been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Now, have you prepared an option C for us to consider?
I'd have, for option 2.
For option 2, I think we need to.
That you're looking for. What I will say with that D is it will have to be the December meeting.
Before the end of the year.
Because the next round of community board meetings clash with council with like PCP council.
December.
So it has to be December.
But it's gone.
So this is on the back of option 2.
It will be.
Yeah.
Perfect. So C, agrees to the distributisation of property, parks, cemeteries, pools and museums, but to include a rating adjustment to offset pool charges and only put offset pool costs because charges could be confused with what you pay for a swim. And D, notes that prior to the December council meeting, workshop the delegations.
That's just very bad language. So
bad English.
Yeah, no,
yeah.
Could I ask, does the word property mean buildings?
Yeah. I think buildings are already districtised in terms of like this.
So what is the word property mean?
Property would be land.
Property is reserves. So that's not there mentioned. Property would have to be reserves, greenways. And buildings.
Not all buildings are districtised, so halls would be property, but the service centre isn't. And the library
expenses. In the annual plan, don't we have?
Distributisation of all council.
No.
It's just that if it means plan, what are we having a meeting in November or December about?
Delegations. Which this will influence one way or the other. So we need to be clear that the delegations have to flow from this. To a degree, this is determining what the shape of the delegations may be, but by no means determines what the delegations will look.
Thank you. Can I suggest that to avoid a potential challenge, that you don't use the word distributisation,
No, yeah, fair enough.
district-wide rate funding, or whatever the right words are,
Yes.
of, and then find the words in the annual plan of how we have those functions that are currently ward-based, so we get the terminology right. I don't think we want to be in a situation where we come out of someone wants to challenge our wording of a resolution that says, I'm going to make this difficult for you.
Yep.
Not yet, fundamentally.
That they are the label schools.
They are.
Yeah.
Well, how, you be with me for a moment, because what I'm thinking, hopefully I've still got, yeah, here's that one of those. Rating. So if you go my rates notice, it's broken down into tracks and waterways, uniform annual charges, planning and environment, waste management. Just what I'm trying to do is get that connection so we, into the rates. Yeah. Why rating? Rating that, well, well, yeah, I suppose that could do it, couldn't it? Yeah. I just want to make sure we don't get ourselves in a situation where someone says, you only had property, that didn't include the halls.
Yeah.
I don't want to be in that situation.
Doesn't do
It does. I think it always has.
Right, as long as we're happy with that, we can defend it.
Can you say something like the, agrees to the balance of district funding now it goes out, excuse me,
remaining.
the remaining ward-based funding is going to be on a district-based level.
Oh, I know. Why don't we put agrees to the district-wide rating of all council business. Less grants.
Less grants.
Yeah.
Less grants.
Excluding grants.
That might be easier.
Yeah, that's much easier.
That's easier.
District-wide rating of all council activities bar grants.
As part of the modelling, museums are part of the district consideration, so you might want to just expressly say agrees to funding all council services, including museums, and then bar the community grants. Because if you, the way we've worded it right now, it might be taken that museums.
Because there are museum grants. Okay,
Yeah.
we're just going to pause all discussion while Wayne catches up.
Yeah. So we just.
That's a very good point, Saskia.
And it'll allay Madam Chair, Cromwell Community Board's concerns about a word that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a funny thing though, because every word didn't exist.
I know.
Yeah.
Shakespeare.
Get on with what you do.
As you told.
Leave Wayne alone. He's my mate.
I think you're quite hungry.
Yeah.
Right. Here we go.
Now, here we have, and I just want to clarify one thing, because does rating cover all that is being contemplated, because it's decision making as well?
The rest is that's delegations.
That's delegations.
Isn't it? Isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Dylan, do you have a thought?
Sorry, yeah, just one comment, sorry, so controversial to ask this work. We don't actually run museums, we fund them through grant second one.
Yeah, which is
now council properties, but they're not an activity that we, that's the paper that's coming.
The consultation, museums were included in option 1 and option 2. The workshop in the council. So essentially what that is, the ring fence said for the grant money. So take all the grant money we give to all our community boards, will be a decision of this table, obviously with community board input, but it did be included in my vote, not the full money table to, it did, through our council direction and early workshops, it has been included in the modelling that's gone out for the consultation document.
It's been part of the discussion. Henley.
Just wondering if it agrees to the district-wide rating of all council activities. If that's different to what we were voting for.
No,
Voting for districtisation, that's
it's the same thing in different words. And as I just raised, do we need to put in there something about decision making? But that'll be the delegations discussion. We'd be preempting the delegations discussion in November if we did that. So I think we're safe. I think the only thing I'd like to add is before grants, excluding current community board grants, because of course council has grants.
Use what was in paper.
And make sure that we, by making this everything but the one thing, we're running the risk of any confusion of what it is we're bringing in, which that property word was causing some confusion. What do we think, folks? We look okay with that?
Is adjustment, is the proper term differential?
It is a different, we would apply a differential.
But that differential would be an adjustment.
Yeah.
It's
That's
slightly jargon.
fine.
Okay, we comfortable? On that basis, I'm going to move C and D and ask if Neil wishes to. Neil will second that. We'll do this by a raise of hands. It's the big one. So any further discussion? All those in favour of seeing?
Lindley said,
Oh, sorry, Lindley. Yeah.
Districtisation's not a word, is the problem that we have.
So this is the effect of what we're doing.
at the moment, what's not districtised is funded by the wards, and now we're saying it's all going to be district-wide rated.
The grants.
So you were just talking about the rating that you're taking off everything in the district. You're not, there's just no flexibility for coming up with new ideas or.
Oh, absolutely. If a board has a new idea and they come to the table, they ask the council for the money rather than doing it themselves. That's the only difference. Okay.
I was also going to tinker with delegations to support C above, but that's in the application. Yeah, it's implied. Thanks, shut up. You're too fancy, I know.
All right.
Show of hands.
All those in favour, raise your hand, please. Yeah. And those against? 3, thank you, and there's no abstentions. Folks, thank you very much. It can't be distracted from at all that that was probably the biggest decision we'll make around this table for any of us. I think it was a magnificent process today, and I'm, as always, incredibly proud of this council. Right, I've got my news report, and guess what?
I've got lunch.
No, I've got my news report because I have to catch a plane. So you've read it, it's there. Any questions? I'll move my report. Tamer will second it. All those in favour? Aye. Against, carried. Thank you to Neil for rest of the day. Thank you to Chris for being here.
What time are we coming back?
Oh, you decide.